The protagonist wonders what an ordinary person would do if their time restarted every day and they were trapped in the same day. At first, they might feel lucky. They would start spending money like crazy because in the end, everything would restart. But soon, they would realize that life is not that interesting. So they would seek fun in gambling, crime, and things like that, since they wouldn't have to worry about consequences. But it's frustrating that everything they do ends up being in vain. Maybe they would want to escape this life, so they would try to end it all. But just like Ken, they would wake up every time on June 7, 2020. The protagonist went through this and spent 1,000 years repeating the same day over and over again. He tells this story to a girl he met at the bar, and she asks if he makes up a crazy story like this every time he tries to get with a girl. She claims that this tactic is already old. However, the protagonist insists that the story is true. His hacking skills are top-notch, and besides that, he knows multiple languages. Then he imagines that the girl has doubts, but he tells her that the next day he will wake up, and everything he did today will be meaningless. The girl thinks this is the first time she's met someone like this, and doesn't know how to communicate with him. She tries to text her friend, but she doesn't reply. Then the protagonist tells her that her friend won't be coming there. This surprises the girl, and she asks how he knows that. The protagonist says that her friend, out of nowhere, got back with her ex-boyfriend and because of that won't decide. The girl doesn't believe him, but the protagonist tells her that in 9 minutes and 13 seconds, her friend will call her. So the girl says she will wait, and if that doesn't happen, she says the protagonist will be dead. After that, a guy from the party sees the girl and starts flirting with her. He grabs her by the arm, saying that she bumped into him and should have a drink to apologize. The girl doesn't know him and tells him to let her go. The annoying guy keeps insisting and won't let go of her arm, until the protagonist steps in. He calls out to the jerk, who immediately asks what he wants. He throws his cigarette at the protagonist, but he dodges it quickly. This surprises the bully. Then he charges at the protagonist. However, he misses the punch because the protagonist dodged. The thug can't believe what he's seeing, and before he can do anything else, he takes a solid punch from the protagonist, getting thrown backward. His friends are shocked because they didn't expect this, unlike the protagonist who already knew this would happen. Right after that, another guy appears. He's the leader of the goon who just got beaten up. As he approaches the protagonist with a serious look, he threatens him, but the protagonist simply tells the man that he is grown, and asks if this is how Xiao taught his younger brother. The man is surprised after hearing the protagonist mention his brother. Then the protagonist takes out his phone and tells Zhao that his brother is causing trouble, shocking him even more for having his number. The protagonist says on the phone that if Zhao doesn't want to start a war in China, then ye should stick to what was agreed upon in the main meeting, and ye should control this people because, otherwise, next time, the conversation won't be over the phone. Then he hands the phone to Zhao's brother, who, upon answering, apologizes for what he did, promising it won't happen again. Soon, not just him, everyone around bows before the protagonist. He tells them that he's in a good mood today and won't punish them. The girl, initially surprised, is now completely amazed, wondering who this guy is, until her phone rings, exactly at the time the protagonist predicted. Her friend tells her that she got back with her boyfriend and apologizes for not coming to the bar. She says this is impossible, but the protagonist insists that it's not and asks her to come with him. The girl hesitates because she still doesn't believe him. Either way, they end up going to the parking lot, until she sees a nice car and asks if it's his. The protagonist says no, but that it doesn't matter because tomorrow, it will be back with its owner. The girl says she's drunk and asks if he's going to take her home. The protagonist says he's not interested in a woman who wears a ton of makeup to look pretty. That doesn't please her one bit. Then she tells him to wait. With that, she takes a handkerchief from her bag and wipes her entire face. After removing her makeup, she asks what the protagonist thinks. He gives her a score of 9 out of 10. Soon he invites her to his house, saying he can prove he's not lying, even mentioning that his bed is a double. The girl agrees but warns that if he tries anything, she will call the police. With a very mischievous smile, the protagonist starts the car and drives off, heading straight to his house with her in the passenger seat. The next day, at dawn, the protagonist's bed is completely messy. He slowly wakes up and says it's just another July 7th. Seeing his empty bed, he realizes the girl is no longer there. However, shortly after, she appears, saying she believed what he said and now wants explanations as to why the day didn't reset as he had mentioned. The protagonist looks at the calendar clock and realizes it's the 8th. He confirms it again by checking her phone. Now he is the one confused by this whole situation. A little while later, the girl starts knocking on the door, asking the protagonist what kind of man hides in the bathroom. She keeps demanding the promised explanations. Meanwhile, as he takes a shower, the protagonist realizes that he is not in a dream, and that time has truly started moving forward. Not only that, that he is now free from this time prison. Excited, he looks forward to exploring the world with the knowledge he has gained. Then a system appears, stating that the host has passed the Millennium Test, and that the time reincarnation system has been initiated. The protagonist wonders if he himself has awakened the system. Wu Cheng sees that his physical attributes are ordinary, but his mental strength is quite high, and he asks if he can now reset time whenever he wants. The system responds that he can, and that the first time he stops or resets time on the same day, it will consume 1 time point, doubling the points required with each additional use. Cheng now understands that if he resets too many times in one day, he will run out of points, but as long as he resets only once, there won't be a problem. In any case, passive reset and active reset are 2 different things. Before he was trapped in time, but now he can control it. Before the reincarnation, he was just an ordinary student with no skills, but now he possesses 1,354 skills at the maximum level, and having completed 1,000 years in the same day was the best proof he could have achieved. Now that time is normal, Cheng intends to use all the abilities he acquired over that period. Behind the door, the girl hears him talking to himself and calls him crazy. Then he finally finishes his shower, saying this is the best day he's had in 1,000 years. And the girl asks if he's still going to insist on that lie. Suddenly someone knocks on his door. The man asks how the protagonist dares to steal his boss's car, and threatens him for it. The girl decides to peep through the door, and sees that they are some rough-looking guys. She says this is the protagonist's fault for stealing the car, and that now he will be hunted down. Cheng hadn't expected this, but coincidentally he stole Wang's car. The girl says this guy is very well known in the underworld, and that it's not good to be pursued by him. Wang has a powerful story of overcoming adversity. His parents were beaten by social workers hired by third parties, and in his rage, he tore them to pieces. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison, and after being released he started working on the streets, becoming known for his intelligence. Now he is one of the big players in China, as well as being very powerful. Because he stole this man's car, the girl says the protagonist is as good as dead. However, Cheng says this is a minor problem, because he remembers that yesterday he ended up using the name Li Gongzi, and if he doesn't handle this properly, it's likely that he and the girl will be hunted to death. She then asks what the protagonist is going to do to fix this. Cheng says he has a simple solution. The girl doesn't quite understand, but he says he will start over and reset the day. Then the system confirms that the host will reset time for the first time on July 8, 2020. This will consume 1 point, leaving him with a little over 360,000 points remaining. With that, he returns to the same day. The moment he woke up, the protagonist realizes that it really worked. The girl starts demanding explanations again, just like before. But this time, he says he doesn't have time for explanations and just asks her to get dressed. That doesn't sit well with her. She says she knew the protagonist would be irresponsible, but she didn't expect it to be this bad. Cheng tells her that the stolen car from yesterday belongs to a man named Wan, and his henchman will be showing up soon. He says he's not afraid for himself, but for her. The girl then asks if the protagonist knows who she is. Then she says that if he does, he will have to beg for her cooperation. The protagonist grabs her by the waist, and asks if he'll have to beg just like she did last night. The girl melts for him, but she doesn't give in and says she will let him die. Cheng apologizes for disappointing her, and says he knows someone who can fix this. She asks who this person is. The protagonist says it's a woman, one who has a lot of love. Sometime later, they are speeding away in the stolen car, with the henchman in pursuit. The protagonist slams his foot on the gas, and the furious henchman threatens to shoot at him. The girl is scared of the guns, but the protagonist says this is the fun part, and tells her to brace herself, because right after he goes even faster. She asks why he's going so fast, and Cheng replies that he can't do anything if he's dead. The henchmen desperately try to catch up since that car is important to their boss. Then, the phone rings. A woman answers, even though the number is unknown. On the other end, the protagonist calls her Miss Lee and says he's only calling to let her know that she has a traitor in her company who will make her lose the bet. She asks who's speaking and how he knows this. The protagonist simply replies that he has his sources and can tell her more about her brother. But for that, she must send someone to meet him downstairs at her office in 30 minutes, so they can talk in person. This piques her curiosity, so she agrees. Meanwhile, the protagonist's car gets cornered, and the girl realizes they are trapped, but Cheng says they can't be trapped, and gets ready to act, pulling off an insane drift right after. The henchmen can't believe what they're seeing, but they fall behind because of that maneuver. The protagonist takes the chance to widen his lead, and speeds off down the highway. His companion is extremely shaken by all the adrenaline, but shortly after he stops the car right in front of her house. She opens her eyes and sees that they actually arrived, but she doesn't remember ever telling him her address, and asks how the protagonist knew where she lived, but she already knows he's going to say something about having lived 1,000 years. So she gets out of the car and says he drives well. Cheng says he practiced his whole life, and died many times in a learning process. However, he warns her not to try copying his skills because he had many chances, but she only has one. The girl doesn't seem too impressed, and says that even though he has her number, she's not at his disposal. After dropping her off, the protagonist leaves, and the girl reflects on what happened, thinking that he fooled her all night, and still thinks he has a chance with her. Soon she concludes that her friend must have helped him with the lie or something like that, so she decides to investigate to see if that's really the case. Half an hour later, at the meeting location, Lai Rubing, on the surface, is an entrepreneur in Donghai City, but her story is far more complicated. The man who could bring destruction to the entire eastern region of China is her brother. In his time loop, the protagonist has already had dealings with her and obtained this information. Inside the president's office at the company, the protagonist waited for her as agreed. She sent one of her men first, just as he requested over the phone. After that, she pulls up information on Hen Wu Cheng, 22 years old, the computer science graduate from Donghai University. Additionally, she obtains personal information about his entire family. He says she's good at this, considering she got all that just from his phone number. Lai Rubing says he seems ordinary but claims that someone like him wouldn't know how to bet. Then she asks who he really is. Cheng replies that he's not ordinary. Moreover, he knows many things that are important to her, like who the traitor in her company is, and that if she pays 10 million, he'll be willing to reveal that person's identity. She barely even knows him and asks if Cheng is seriously demanding such a high amount for information she can't even verify as true. Then, Lai Rubing points a gun at him, saying that if the protagonist doesn't speak up now, he will die. Cheng says he knows she would actually shoot, but asks how she plans to do that without ammunition. Lai Rubing realizes that her gun is unloaded, but since she grabbed it from under the table, she questions how the protagonist took the bullets. She tries to figure it out, but soon Cheng says he is a businessman, and the way he removed the ammunition from her gun is part of his skill. He hands the gun with the bullets back to her, asking Lai Rubing to trust him, as he doesn't want to hurt her, he just wants to negotiate. The protagonist knows that she always needs a reason and money makes the most sense, so talking about money is the best way to lower her psychological guard. Then Lai Rubing tells the protagonist to speak up about what he knows. Cheng says that she is the eldest daughter of the Li family, but was treated differently because she was a girl. She wanted to fight and prove women's strength, but she ended up in her brother's shadow. Her mother helped her, but after separating from her father, she started dating other men and drifted away from her, even threatening to kill her if she didn't marry Ding Rulong. Lai Rubing wanted to escape and abandon the arranged marriage, but she couldn't leave because she was worried about her mother. To discourage her fiancé, she had 3 fake boyfriends. Each of them met a worse fate than the last. The first went to heaven, the second ended up in an asylum, and the third was framed for a crime and will likely never leave prison. Ding Rulong is a careful man. He did all this to ensure no other man could get close to her. So to escape the marriage, she and her fiancé made a secret bet. They agreed to each start a business, and whoever's business was bigger in 5 years would win. But what Lai Rubing doesn't know is that Ding has already turned someone close to her into a spy. On the day of the launch, this person will ruin everything. Now Lai Rubing knows that the protagonist wasn't bluffing, so she simply writes a check for the amount he requested, and tells him to reveal the traitor. The protagonist agrees to tell her, but then, a secretary appears, holding some documents for her, and says that Lai Rubing needs to sign them. However, as he approaches, the protagonist grabs the man and points the gun at him, saying that he is the traitor. With a gun to his head, the man denies it, but the protagonist asks where the 5 million in his Swiss bank account came from. The man denies everything, and the protagonist realizes he won't confess so easily. So he takes the man's phone and reveals that he has been in contact with someone from the outside. With that, the man's facade crumbles. Lai Rubing says that he has helped her a lot over the years, and that she won't take it personally because of that, but she never thought he would betray her for 5 million. He admits that he took the money but insists he has something to say. Then he claims that her mother didn't want the arranged marriage but was pressured by Lai Rubing's grandfather. However, the protagonist calls it a lie, saying that the man is only repeating what he was told to say. Then he hands the gun to her to decide what to do. Lai Rubing simply tells the man to leave and that she never wants to see him again. He thanks her for sparing his life and runs out of the room. Cheng comments that she was going to kill the traitor, but Lai Rubing says she just didn't want to do it herself. By the end of the day, that man will be at the bottom of the river. Even so, she remains suspicious of the protagonist, saying that he was probably sent by Ding Rulong and is only getting rid of a pawn to gain her trust. Seeing that Lai Rubing doesn't trust him, Cheng says he has a way to solve that, and offers to be her fake boyfriend. He explains that her fiancé is very concerned about his reputation and would never allow himself to be humiliated just to win over Lai Rubing, so being her fake boyfriend is the best way to prove his innocence. She points out that all her previous fake boyfriends were ruined by Ding Rulong. The protagonist is well aware of that, but he says that for those who want to climb higher, having a relationship with her will make life very interesting. Lai Rubing admits that Cheng is very brave and bold, and that for someone so young, it would be a shame for him to die like this. Then she asks if he isn't afraid. With a gun pointed at his head, Cheng says that if she really wanted to kill him, she would have done it already. That's why he isn't afraid of her. With that, Lai Rubing steps back and says that she really likes him. She also says that couples should always have a photo of just the two of them. Using her own phone, she takes a picture, and the protagonist thinks she must have done it to ensure he isn't lying, and to make Ding Rulong jealous. Lai Rubing says that from today on, they are a couple, and Cheng must be her personal assistant. Soon, she will need him again. She also asks what happened to her brother. East China Sea Crown, Central China Regal, South China Sea Plaza. These are the three biggest entertainment clubs in China. Among them, there is the East China Sea Crown, run by her brother. Lai Rubing says that everyone in the East China Sea region knows about these things. However, the protagonist says that the East China Sea Crown has been crossing the line, getting involved with high-profile celebrities, wealthy individuals, and officials. The investigation started 3 months ago, and based on what he knows, the network is expected to be shut down within a month at most. He also says that this isn't just a problem for her brother but also for her family. Once the network is shut down, her brother won't just be arrested, and if necessary, their family will have to sever ties with him. Lai Rubing says this is very serious and asks if he is sure about what he is saying. The protagonist says that if she doesn't believe him, there's another way to confirm it. Later, at the East China Sea Crown Club, one of the henchmen who was chasing the protagonist reports the incident to his boss. His name is Wang Yuan, the right-hand man of Lei Rutai. After hearing all this, Wang asks if the protagonist has given up on his life. Zhao, the same guy who answered the protagonist's call earlier, says it's strange that son Randon Brat had his phone number and knew about the main meeting. The eldest grandson of the Li family says that whatever the reason, if they find the protagonist, he wants to kill him with his own hands. Suddenly, Lai Rubing enters the meeting room and interrupts their conversation. Her brother tells them to put out their cigarettes because she doesn't like the smell or the smoke. Then he asks why she showed up in person and if it's urgent. Lai Rubing says she's here to introduce someone. Cheng says that he borrowed his car yesterday and hands back the key, saying the car is parked nearby. The henchman quickly recognizes him, saying this is the man they were talking about. The protagonist looks at Lai Rubing's brother and knows he is the one most capable of wielding the family's power, even stronger than Ding Rulong. Lai Rubing had a tough upbringing. She spared no effort to either protect her brother or defeat him. This also led Lai Ruote to respect his sister. He tries to say something to her about the protagonist, but Lai Rubing grabs his ear, saying that this guy is her new boyfriend, and her brother should call him brother-in-law. Everyone present is shocked to hear this. Ruote thinks his sister has brought home another fake boyfriend and asks for a good reason to go along with it. Lai Rubing realizes she'll have to improvise, so she says she hasn't been feeling well recently, claiming it's all her boyfriend's fault. The protagonist asks if she isn't overacting a little too much. She asks if Cheng is afraid of being killed by her brother. He says no, but mentions that her brother looks a little dazed. Ruote starts to believe that his sister is pregnant with the protagonist's child and takes her story seriously. He thinks the protagonist doesn't look like a bad guy, but he's also not the most handsome man. He also knows his sister likes older men and wonders why she is dating someone who looks like he's in his early 20s. Soon he starts to suspect that his sister is being deceived, saying that love often makes people blind and drops their IQ to 0. Because of this, he concludes that he must save his sister, and asks how they met. Cheng says it was 3 months ago when Lai Rubing was recruiting interns at a university. She thinks to herself that she really did do that but wonders how the protagonist knows. Her brother says that's not a long time and asks if she really likes this man. He also says that the henchman reported that the protagonist was with a girl at the bar last night. The protagonist says that the girl in question is Mu Qian, daughter of Mu Safai, the owner of the East China Sea Biomedical Group. Speaking of which, he thanks Dao, saying that if he hadn't interrupted the commotion, the protagonist wouldn't have been able to make his next move as planned. Moreover, the group is worth billions of dollars, leads the industry in the country, and has political influence. If the girl had gotten into trouble, they would be facing a huge problem. He also says that even if they win against the new group, they will still have to pay a high price. Upon realizing that he avoided a major issue thanks to the protagonist, Ruotai expresses his gratitude for the help. His sister didn't expect that he, a man who fears nothing, would be subdued by the protagonist in just a few words. Then she states that she is there for something important, and reveals that someone higher up wants to take over the Crown Club. Everyone present is shocked by this. Ruote says it's impossible because he personally handled everything and would have known if that were the case. Chang tells Rote that he shouldn't have used the video to blackmail those people and that his dealings with Seihu should have been cut off long ago. Lai Rubing scolds her brother, saying that he should no longer be in contact with Tai, as she has warned him multiple times that he is not a good person. The protagonist agrees with her and adds that Sai put the blame on Ruotai for what happened and even claimed the idea was his. Ruotai says that not even his sister knew about this and asks how the protagonist found out. Chang, however, says that he doesn't owe him an explanation because he is there for his sister and only helped him out of consideration for her, because if something happened to him, Lei Rubing would be upset. Even so, Rute demands clarification, threatening the protagonist in front of his sister. Then Lei Rubing tells him to calm down, but her brother refuses to believe the protagonist's words and says he is deceiving them both. Cheng says that only a few people in China know about this matter, and reveals that 4 months ago, Liu Bo, who was parachuted into the Eastern China Maritime Police Department as deputy director, came to handle the Crown Entertainment case. Some investigators, disguised as guests, and others, hidden inside the club's premises, gathered a lot of evidence. Then the protagonist writes down some names and says it is the list of undercover agents. After reading the entire list, Ruote tells Zhao to notify the others and start gathering weapons. He instructs Wan to take his men and investigate the names on the list. And as for the protagonist, he warns that if the information is wrong, he will be held accountable. Cheng doesn't seem worried at all. Then he asks Ruotai how much he is willing to spend. After some time, once the tasks have been assigned, Ruotai receives the gathered intelligence. With that, he confirms the protagonist's information and orders his men to capture everyone on the list immediately. However, Cheng tells him that won't be possible, because if even one of them is missing, the police will start to act, and they have evidence linking Ruotai to illegal casinos. Angrily, he asks the protagonist what he should do. Cheng asks whether he wants to move forward and go to prison, or if he wants to get through this situation safely. Ruotai asks what the best solution is. The protagonist tells him not to send his men just yet, so Ruotai cancels the order and asks what comes next. Cheng tells Ruotai to apologize to Hen, and everything will be resolved. Ruotai wonders if he will have to start respecting the protagonist from now on. Lai Rubing tells Cheng to help her brother since they are now part of the same family. However, the protagonist says that Ruotai doesn't see him that way. Ruotai insists that's not true and confirms that Cheng is now part of his family. Then he apologizes to the protagonist, explaining that he was just afraid he was lying to his sister. Cheng says he doesn't like the apology, but because it is sister, he will give him a solution. First, he tells Rote that he must kill Sihu. He knows too much, and if he stays alive, nothing will work out. He also mentions that Sihu went to Villa 17 in the Lotus District to do drugs with his mistress. If he dies at an overdose, no one will suspect a thing. Second, now that all the evidence is in Liu Bo's hands, the only thing left to do is steal and destroy it, ensuring Rote's safety. Rote agrees to do it. However, the protagonist warns that Liu Bo is too powerful for Rote to handle alone. Then the protagonist reveals the location of a safe and its password, saying that all the evidence is there, and all he has to do is send someone to steal and destroy it. Ruotai is impressed by the level of detail. Then he says that Ruotai must inform the old man, especially about the situation with Sihu, because in the end, this concerns the Wei family. The Li and Wei families have been hostile toward each other for years, and both sides have been at war. Many people were arrested because of it, but the Wei family came out on top. That's why the Li family wanted to join forces with the Ding family to defeat them. After everything is over, the Wei family will try to take advantage, and many problems will arise. That's why it's important for the old man to know everything, and the cherry on top is the Crown Club, which is why the protagonist says it must be burned down. Ruotai doesn't like having to do that, but the protagonist tells him he doesn't need to understand everything, just enough to match what appears in the news. That way he can redecorate the place and shut it down without raising suspicion. If he can accomplish these 4 things, the protagonist guarantees success. Lai Rubing pulls her brother's ear and tells him that he must do exactly as Cheng said. Then Ruote's phone gets a notification. He sees that it's about the casino. One of his people has just lost 2 million. He immediately says he has to go there and asks them to wait for his return. Cheng asks if it's Shen Guanjin, the owner of Fushing Aluminum. Ruotai confirms and asks how he knew. Later, at the casino, the protagonist says that Shen Guanjin arrived in East China yesterday and deliberately removed the city's veteran gamblers from the casino to avoid another humiliation. He says that Ruotai and Sihu's business essentially relies on using their connections to cheat and gambling, and steal the house's money. That's how the casino operates. However, they let people win it first and then take everything back. Shen Guan lost millions, which led his company to bankruptcy. To solve this problem, he scraped together money from various places, and in the process he discovered that many people had already lost money to Ken. That's why he informed the Li family's arch-nemesis, the Wei family. During the investigation, they uncovered his secret recordings, and the Wei family took advantage of that. Normally, Shen wouldn't dare bring in a professional gambler, as he can't afford to provoke the Li family. But now he doesn't care because he knows his business partner is finished. After hearing this, Ru Tai wants revenge, but the protagonist tells him not to get too excited. Meanwhile, Shen Guanjun is at a poker table, accompanied by Shen Guanlin, the head of Fushing Alunan, who has just won a poker hand, making Shen excited about winning a lot of money. Then Ru Tai appears, complimenting his victory. Shen says he made a little money today, and asks if Ru Tai minds. He says that while the veterans here played and lost, so it seems Mr. Lai isn't very talented. But the protagonist steps in, saying he disagrees. Then he challenges Shen to a poker match. Shen asks if the protagonist really wants to do this, claiming that he already lost 2 million today and still wants to continue. Ru Tai asks if, on top of everything else, Cheng is also good at gambling, but his sister doesn't know how to answer. The protagonist's opponent knows that gambling masters are good at reading their opponent's psychological states, which requires great experience, something he believes is impossible for Cheng to have. Just by looking at his face, he already deduces what his cards are. Lai Rubing gets closer to the protagonist and asks if he can do it. Cheng replies that he can, and without a doubt, he can beat any casino in the world. Then the game begins. The opponent notices that Cheng places bets without even looking at his cards and wonders if that's a habit. Then the protagonist flips over a card, and the opponent says he gets to start since his hand is higher. Then Cheng bets 500,000. The opponent raises the bet. Cheng then doubles the amount. As the game progresses, the protagonist's opponent remains cautious, while he keeps raising the stakes, but the protagonist doesn't back down, and keeps his opponent in the game, until, after several rounds, the protagonist wins every single one, and Ru Tai tells Shen that the guy he hired is running out of luck. However, Shen doesn't seem the least bit worried, because he's just waiting for the protagonist to fall into his trap. He knows his guy has a habit of losing at the beginning to observe his opponent, and at the right moment, he turns the game around. Shen thinks Ru Tai has already lost 200 million, and if he loses more, the casino will definitely encourage the protagonist to keep going. Then the dealer asks what the next bet will be, and the protagonist replies that he'll bet 1 million. His opponent has already figured out that he bets without looking at his cards, and seems to rely purely on luck, so he raises the bet. With that, Cheng bets another million. The opponent thinks the protagonist has a very weak hand, while he himself has a pair of kings, almost a guaranteed win. Since that's the case, he decides to go all in. Ru Tai bets on his brother-in-law's victory, but knows that his cards have not been revealed. The protagonist touches the cards for the first time, and also goes all in. With that, the opponent wants to raise the stakes even higher. Cheng asks Ru Tai what he thinks. He then tells the casino girls to bring more chips, and they return with stacks of 100 million each, just as the players requested. Based on his observations, the opponent thinks that the protagonist only uses the tip of his finger when the card is important, so the chances of him having an ace are high. Because of that, he folds and says the protagonist is too impulsive. If he had only bet 50 million, he would have won. Lai Rubing asks Cheng if his card was an ace. He replies that it wasn't, and reveals that he only had the 2 of hearts. The opponent is furious at being tricked, but the protagonist claims it's not his fault since the man folded. However, the opponent doesn't want to stop now because he believes the protagonist has other habits. The rounds continue advancing, and both become more focused on the game. At a certain point, the opponent sees a 9 of diamonds in his hand. He says that they both have the same hand, and unless the protagonist has a 9, he won't win, as the probability of drawing a 9 is quite low. Once again, the protagonist doesn't look at his cards. Then the opponent says that now is the time to end the game once and for all. He declares that both have a strong hand and suggests a showdown. 200 million all in. The protagonist agrees and raises the bet. The tension fills the air. Even Lai Rubing thinks this is too risky. Her brother believes in the protagonist's potential. The opponent notices Wu Cheng's confidence and goes all in. He tells the protagonist not to be reckless with his bets, because if he can't control himself, he won't get far. He also says that the protagonist thinks of himself as the god of gambling and doesn't even look at his cards, and that this is what led to his downfall. With that, he reveals his card and immediately claims victory. Not just him, but Shen also feels triumphant, saying that for Ru Tai, losing 200 million is nothing. However, the protagonist picks up his cards and says that if the opponent thinks it's over, he should see for himself. With that, he reveals a 9, the card that secures his victory. Upon losing, the opponent is in shock. The protagonist tells him that his mistake was truly believing he never checked his cards. He also reveals that he has been checking his cards every round since the beginning, and his opponent never even noticed. Chang says the opponent is good but too arrogant to recognize his own defeat. The protagonist used his habits to deceive the opponent and make him believe he had the upper hand, but from the very start, he was the one controlling the game. Not only did he lose, but Shen went down with him. Ruotai mentions that all of Shen's money was borrowed, and now he's in trouble. With that, he tells his gambling partner to have a talk outside. However, the protagonist doesn't let them leave. Shen asks if this is how guests are treated. Ruotai asks why they can't leave. Chang says he will reveal it later and asks if Ruotai has a knife. Ruotai hands him the knife and asks if his brother-in-law knows how to use it. He responds by demonstrating his skills. Immediately after, he walks toward the losers, making his opponent tremble in fear, until an ace of spades falls from his sleeve. Chang says that during one of the rounds, the man requested a new deck and took the opportunity to cheat by hiding this ace in his sleeve. He also says he didn't reveal it earlier because he hadn't won yet. Ruotai asks how he dares to cheat right in front of him, and demands an immediate explanation. The player tries to backtrack, claiming it's all a misunderstanding. However, the protagonist doesn't believe him and grabs the man's arm, stating that he broke the rules and asking if he knows what happens to those who do that. Chang prepares his knife and declares that the cheater will suffer the consequences. He then grips the cheater's hand and asks Shen what he has to say about this. Shen claims he had nothing to do with the cheating and that the player acted alone. The protagonist hands the knife to Ruotai and says he will step out, leaving him to handle the rest. But he reminds him not to deal with it inside the club. Ruotai understands and takes charge of the situation. As they leave, Lai Rubing asks Chang if stabbing someone feels good. The protagonist replies that it doesn't, and asks if she would feel good about cutting off her own hand. Lai Rubing wonders how the protagonist can stay so calm after stabbing someone, and she questions whether he would actually kill someone or not. Sometime later in the car, Lai Rubing says she didn't expect to see the protagonist doing so well in gambling. He thanks her but reminds her not to forget to pay his share. She realizes that Chang only thinks about money. Suddenly, the protagonist starts acting strangely. He becomes suspicious of something, and Lai Rubing asks what's going on. Chang says that a car is following them. Then the driver himself confirms it. Lai Rubing immediately orders him to shake off the pursuer. She says that Ding Rulan likes to send people to follow her, but the protagonist knows that's not the case, and that the real target isn't her, so he takes her hand, saying that he'll take care of everything. Lai Rubing wonders if the protagonist is using this opportunity to flirt with her, but she actually likes it. Then she asks if Chang is hungry, because considering his accomplishments today, she's going to treat him well. After that, they head to a restaurant. Chang says that many people there seem to like her and asks if he'll be seen as a competitor. However, Lai Rubing says that's exactly the point. Shortly after, Kan Delik, the head of Longing Innovation Group, appears to greet her. Lai Rubing says her boyfriend was hungry, so she decided to bring him to eat. Then she formally introduces the protagonist to Mr. Han. Juan says the protagonist is handsome, perfect for Lai Rubing. Chang thanks him, saying the man is kind with his words. After that, Han apologizes for interrupting their date, and says he has to meet a client. Lai Rubing says that Han is a good guy, as well as an influential figure and a chamber of commerce. But the protagonist says he doesn't need that information because he knows Han better than she does. This makes Lai Rubing realize that he knows everyone who approaches her. However, the protagonist warns Lai Rubing that not everyone wants to be her friend. She's aware of that. After all, she has many rivals, especially women, but she claims that thinking of her as an enemy is foolish, something the protagonist has to agree with. Right then, a woman appears, asking if Lai Rubing has found a new boyfriend. The protagonist recognizes her as Lee Kaesun, 32 years old. She is married to an important man and has a child with him. Together, they built Yunsu Fashion, and she is also Lai Rubing's competitor. Kaesun points out that Lai Rubing is 27, but the man beside her looks younger and asks if she's after college. And Lai Rubing responds that she'll take it as a joke but tells her to stop. However, Liu asks if she still cares about what others say. This irritates Lai Rubing, and she almost throws hot coffee in her rival's face. But the protagonist stops her and asks to handle the situation. He then stands up in front of Liu and stares at her for a moment. The woman asks why the protagonist is looking at her like that. He replies that he has seen her somewhere before. Then he remembers where, claiming that she once worked in a brothel. Lee Kaesun is furious at this provocation and asks how the protagonist dares to say that about her without even knowing her. Cheng replies that she can't erase her past just with plastic surgery. The woman is in shock, realizing that the protagonist might actually know who she is. However, she wonders how, since that was 10 years ago, and no one should know about it. Lai Rubing praises the protagonist for having that information, saying his intelligence is greater than she thought, but he says the best is yet to come. Then the woman's husband appears. He is Lu Guanyan, the head of Donghai Jula Group and vice president of the Donghai Chamber of Commerce. The woman runs into his arms, saying that the protagonist insulted her and demanding revenge. He tells her not to cry, and that he will handle it. Then he asks Lai Rubing where the man beside her is. She replies that he's her boyfriend. Guanyan tells the protagonist that he humiliated his wife, and that is the same as humiliating him. Therefore, this won't be settled with just words. Cheng says he has someone who can resolve this for him. Guanyin assumes he's talking about his girlfriend, and says that she won't be able to protect him in this situation, but the protagonist says he wasn't referring to Lai Rubing, and says he was talking about Mahothe. The man becomes extremely tense, and asks if the protagonist really knows her. Even Lai Rubing was startled by his reaction. Cheng calls Mr. Lu for a private conversation. Then the two of them step away from the others. The protagonist says he has 2 stories to tell, and the main character is his wife. 10 years ago, she was encouraged by her lover to enter a brothel to make easy money. In the process, she met a very wealthy client. This client started a demolition business, and when he was young, he had a dispute with someone. After leaving the hospital, the doctor told him he would be sterile. Because of that, even artificial fertilization failed. The client revealed this secret when he was drunk, and after that, Liu Kexun devised a plan. She underwent plastic surgery and changed her name. Then, with the help of her accomplice, she became the client's mistress. 3 months later, she became pregnant and gave birth to a boy. But the child is not the client's, it was her accomplice's. They knew the client might request a paternity test, so they falsified the documents with the doctor in charge. Even though he noticed the lack of resemblance to the child, Mr. Lu didn't want to believe it because his desire to be a father was too strong. The final part of the plan was to let him die and steal his fortune. After hearing this, Mr. Lu can't believe the story. Then the protagonist asks if his wife's cousin works at his company, and reveals that this is not really her cousin, it's her lover. Both of them are deceiving him as they please. The protagonist also says that his wife left home last night to meet her lover. To avoid being seen, she used the stairs so it's easy to verify. All he has to do is check the security cameras. But he also suggests that Mr. Lu ask her directly. To make her tell the truth, he will need to be smart and trick her. Even though he is suspicious of the story, Lu decides to act as the protagonist suggested. So he asks his wife where she and her cousin were yesterday. She replies that they were at the office until the end of the day. Her husband then says that the cousin claimed he went with her to meet a client. However, she denies this version of events. Then her husband says he will call her cousin right now to confirm. At that moment, the woman suddenly remembers that they left quickly and were talking about work. Then she questions why he is asking so many questions all of a sudden. Extremely furious, Mr. Lu slaps his wife, claiming that he already knows all her secrets, and that he doesn't want to hear any more of her lies. Mr. Lu apologizes for what just happened, but Lai Rubing says it's fine, and that they won't tell anyone about it. Lu says that all he ever wanted was to have a child. He never imagined he would be used because of that. He is enraged at having been deceived for so long, but realizes that he must accept that he will never have a child. However, the protagonist tells him that he does, in fact, have a son. Mr. Lu doesn't understand. Kan Cheng reminds him that he mentioned having 2 stories to tell. He explains that there was once a couple who were childhood friends, and one day they fell in love. They wanted to spend the rest of their lives together, but the man became wealthy and eventually betrayed her. After that, he fled with the money, never knowing that he had left her pregnant. She gave birth to a boy and lost all contact with the father. Because of that, she was treated with disdain by her family and ended up having to raise the child alone. To the child, she always said that his father had passed away, but the boy grew up, had a successful career, started his own family, and now lives happily. Then he reveals that not only does Mr. Lu have a son, he also has a granddaughter. Lu asks what his son's name is. The protagonist only knows the mother's name, Ma Jiawei. Lu realizes that she never changed her name and asks if she ever got married afterward. Cheng says that she no longer trusts men, and that she has been living in Donghai. She likely knows about Lu, but she never sought him out because she was too deeply hurt. The protagonist gives him her address, and tells him that whether he chooses to apologize or not is up to him. He becomes excited and says that if he can reunite with her, he will owe the protagonist a favor. Lai Rubing remarks that Lu is now indebted to them, and Cheng notes that this will be useful in the future. Sometime later he arrives home, but before entering, Lai Rubing calls out to Ken, saying she still has something to say. The protagonist leans against the car and asks what it is. Lai Rubing simply grabs him and pulls him in for a kiss. She says that Ding Rulan has people spying on her, so she has to maintain the image of a proper girlfriend. Cheng asks if that was her first kiss. Lai Rubing asks if that's part of his intelligence. He simply says that the kiss was so mechanical it hurt his mouth. Either way, he says goodbye and heads straight to his apartment. At the door, the girl from the bar and her friend were waiting for him. Lily says that her friend has been brainwashed by the protagonist, and she can't let him get away with it. The girl says she thought her friend had set everything up with the protagonist, but now that she knows that wasn't the case, she wonders how he knew about her. Lily says she didn't tell him anything but wants to hit the protagonist for what he did to her friend. The girl thinks she never expected this to turn into such a mess. Then the protagonist approaches, and the girl says that's him. Ironically, Cheng says he has arrived. Lily immediately starts insulting him, so the protagonist asks how she innocently came after him. Even though she thinks he's a terrible person, the protagonist puts his hand in his pocket, and Lily tells him not to come any closer. However, he says he's just grabbing his keys to open the door. Lily doesn't like being ignored, so she takes out a stun baton and moves toward him. But before she can do anything, the protagonist tells her that her boyfriend is cheating on her. He says that when Lily returned to Donhive 4 days ago, her boyfriend went to see his mistress. He even writes down the address. He also says that after spending all his money partying, her boyfriend came back to her for financial support. And if she doesn't believe it, Shane offers to persuade her boyfriend himself. However, Lily refuses to believe it, saying she has great taste in men, and calls her boyfriend to prove it's a lie. She then calls and asks if he is at her place, telling him to confirm whether there are 10,000 in the bedroom drawer, but he says he'll check in 30 minutes. Lily realizes that her boyfriend lied and runs off to catch him in the act. Her friend tells her to wait because she wants to go too. But before that, the protagonist picks her up in his arms, saying that since she's already here, they might as well go inside. She asks why he picked her up like that. Cheng responds that a princess shouldn't get tired from walking too much. She, however, begs to be put down. The next day, the protagonist gets out of bed, and while getting ready to leave, he asks if the girl isn't going to get up. She replies that she didn't sleep well because of him and needs her beauty sleep. Then the protagonist tosses a piece of paper to her, saying it's his number, and if she wants to talk to him, she should call instead of holding back. She gets super excited about it. Upon leaving his house, the car follows him. The protagonist takes out his phone. He calls someone, saying he noticed he was being followed and that if they want to talk to him, they should meet him after his training. Cheng has mastered combat techniques over the past 1,000 years, but his physical condition is still not good enough, so he needs more training. After everything, he has offended Ding Rulan, and doesn't know what kind of trouble he'll face in the future. After finishing his training, he notices that his visitor has arrived, and he thinks that, in the past, Wan was just a second-rate thug, but he and Li Tai climbed the ranks of connections and gained power, expanding their influence. Within a few years, Wang became one of the 4 bosses. Together, they control 90% of China's entertainment industry and social businesses like logistics. Wan approaches and says he wants to clear up a misunderstanding. He explains that he had someone follow the protagonist for his safety and had no ill intentions. Cheng says that his brother-in-law probably doesn't know that Wang is doing this, and that he is very protective of his sister. So if he finds out, Wang will be in big trouble. But he says he won't tell him. Otherwise he wouldn't have called him to talk. Then Wang asks what he wants. Cheng says he wants to be his friend because Wang has many subordinates, and if he ever needs help, he wants Wang's support. Wang says that if the protagonist ever needs anything, he can ask for his help at any time. The protagonist thinks that he has a lot of information but lacks manpower, so Wang's assistance will make things easier. Then, his phone rings, and someone says there's a problem and needs Cheng's help as soon as possible. One says that he has clean clothes in his car that Cheng can use and wants him to accept it as an apology. The protagonist accepts and is pleased to have earned Wang's trust. Then he drives to his destination. There are several employees are trying to solve the problem, including Li Rubing, who called the protagonist. As soon as he arrives, he asks what happened. She says that her representative, Deng Sunye, was in a car accident. Cheng says that because he helped her uncover the traitor, Ding Rulan realized that his plan had been exposed, and today this girl had an accident. To prevent her from speaking about the product, this is no coincidence. Li Rubing wants retaliation, stating that Ding Rulan cannot violate the rules of the bet and even use his family's influence without facing consequences. Cheng asks if she wants him to find a new representative. Since she will need one, Li Rubing answers yes. Then he mentions Tom Manning, a top-tier national film star with multiple awards, and asks if she is qualified. Li Rubing says that an actress as famous as her would never agree, much less become her representative. She also says that she appreciates the protagonist's good intentions, but false hopes won't help. However, he says that if she doesn't believe in his abilities, they can make a bet. He claims that he can find Tom Manning and have her sign a contract by tomorrow morning. Tao Manning is a first-class actress, and was the first Chinese actress to enter the international star rankings, receiving numerous awards in the process. Since then she has received various sponsorships, and become one of the highest-paid actresses in the world. Lai Rubing then asks if Cheng can really do what he claims, since Manning is filming internationally, and has several powerful sponsors. The protagonist doubles down on his bet. He says he will accomplish what he promised. If not, he will forfeit the 10 million from before and pay Li Rubing an additional 20 million. However, if he succeeds, decides the casino money she owes him, she will have to add another 20 million. Moreover, she will not be allowed to get jealous of him. Lai Rubing asks why she would feel jealous since their relationship is fake, and he can be with whoever he wants without interfering with their arrangement. She also states that she has no right to stop him from doing so. Cheng then says they have a deal, telling her she can already deposit that money into his account. Lai Rubing gets irritated by his overconfidence, but Cheng doesn't waste any time. He makes a call and says he has a favor to ask. Then he heads to Wang's player lobby. Wang says that his men are skilled at gambling, but asks what the protagonist needs them for. Cheng tells them to turn on their computers and play the game Legendary Lord the City. Additionally, everyone must register, enter the third zone, and use King of Hordes as their prefix. After logging in, they must wait for Cheng in the newbie area, as he claims he will carry and build the clan. 4 hours later, the team is assembled. They are facing strong opponents in the game, and after defeating them, several items drop, which are distributed among the players. One appears and says that the clan has crushed the original gang, and is now the largest gang on the server, though it cost nearly 8 million to acquire this equipment. Cheng says that there are no more casual players on the server. Other small clubs have left, and only King of Hordes and World Devouring Dragon remain. Now it's time for the second phase of the plan. Then everyone receives a message that the clan leader has started a new battle. In the city hall, the fight escalates. Cheng meets with the leader of the rival clan, who says he can't believe the protagonist spent so much money on the game. He must be a true fan as well. However, he points out that their guilds are evenly matched, so anyone could win, but the protagonist disagrees and says the winner will be announced soon. His opponent notices his confidence and asks if the protagonist is already declaring victory. Cheng replies that he isn't. He says that his opponent will be the winner. Then he instructs everyone under his command to unequip all their items and immediately log out of the game. His opponent is completely baffled and asks what he is doing. He doesn't want the match to end like this, claiming that it's rare to have an opponent of this caliber. He also says that he spent 10 million on the game, and that if the protagonist quits now, it will all be for nothing. Cheng explains that his girlfriend's company is in trouble, and they need to find a new representative since the previous one got injured. So to help her, he can't play anymore. His opponent says that if he needs an actress, all he has to do is say the name, and he can arrange it. And even if it's Tom Manning, he can arrange it with just one phone call. The protagonist feels accomplished because that was exactly what he wanted to hear. Cheng says he has something to do. He's going on a business trip to East China, so he can't play anymore. His opponent says he's also from East China. The protagonist calls it a coincidence but insists he has to leave. As soon as he exits the game, a message arrives on his phone. Everything went according to plan, because he managed to establish the contact he needed. He tells the men that they did a great job, but if they have nothing else to do, they can leave now. The protagonist arranges a meeting with the other player. Upon arrival, he meets Lei Cheng, 42 years old, head of the Lei family and owner of Hongfei Industries. Cheng introduces himself and says he already knows who Lei is. Lei knows his reputation precedes him, but he asks which family the protagonist belongs to. Wu Cheng asks why he's being so cautious, and if he's afraid that his brother will kill him. He knows that the Lei family's Hongfei Industries is one of the top 10 industrial companies in the country, with total assets exceeding 60 billion. The current president is semi-retired, and the one responsible for running the company is standing right in front of him. A major family that associates with him is considered a traitor. So Lei again asks which family the protagonist belongs to. He replies that he doesn't belong to any rival family and doesn't have the background Lei thinks he does, claiming that their meeting was purely a matter of fate. Lei still doesn't trust the protagonist and thinks he will have to uncover his true intentions little by little. Then he asks more about the protagonist's girlfriend's problem and mentions that he spent a lot of money gambling, which he could have used to hire a spokesperson. Wu Qing replies that a rival ran over his former representative with a car. Lei then asks if he spent money gambling to get revenge on that rival. He offers to help find a new representative and asks for more details. Cheng says that his girlfriend's company is in the cosmetics industry, Symphony Fashion, Lei then asks if his girlfriend is Lai Rubing, and says that he could have mentioned that earlier, as he was already starting to think the protagonist was a rival. Then Chang calls Lai Rubing. She asks if he's finally ready to admit defeat. Instead, he suggests raising the stakes, and says that whoever loses will have to kneel before the winner. Hearing this, Lei thinks the protagonist is incredibly bold for suggesting something like that to Lai Rubing. Chang says it's just a couple's game, and explains the bet they made. After hearing that, Lee asks if he minds sharing the details of the bet. The protagonist says that someone is messing with the company, and that his girlfriend didn't want him to interfere because she wanted to protect him. He then asks if Lei knows Ding Rulan. Lei says that everyone knows Ding Rulan, and asks if he was the one who harmed the representative. Chang confirms that he was, which is why his girlfriend tried to protect him. But he claims to be a man of honor, and says that if his girlfriend is in trouble, he won't be a coward, he will do something about it, otherwise he couldn't call himself a man. Hearing this, Lei says he's right, and agrees to help him with his problem. Chang says that because of the bet, Lai Rubing gave him full control over the company's new product launch. If the press conference happens without any issues, he wins, but if it fails, he loses the bet. After losing, he would have to obey Lai Rubing in everything, restrict himself, and live as a submissive man. Lei sympathizes with him, and says he will make sure he wins the bet, and you will immediately help him secure a new representative. Then, Tao Manning's phone rings. She answers and realizes it's her father. Lei tells her to take a vacation and return to China because she has an urgent contract to fulfill, something related to cosmetics, and that he will handle all the paperwork. As soon as he hangs up, he tells the protagonist that it's settled. Chang realizes that everything went as planned, even easier than expected. Though the contract fee for the renowned actress won't be cheap, he was even prepared to pressure Lei if necessary. But Lei didn't hesitate to insult Ding Rulan right in front of Ben, proving to be a potential ally. Lei says they were destined to meet and already considers the protagonist like a brother. Chang says he feels the same way, and says he has something for Lei in return. Chang sends Lei a text message. Then he tells him to find the owner of that number, because that person will tell him the truth about his car accident 10 years ago. Chang tells Lei to hurry, as he can't let this guy escape. That night 10 years ago, a truck crashed into Lei's car. He reacted quickly, but it was no use. He wasn't alone in the car. Even after swerving, they were thrown off the road, and the car exploded into flames. Fortunately, Lei survived, but he watched his wife die right before his eyes. After that, he was hospitalized for 3 months, and during that time, his agent brought in some clues. The truck belonged to Xiang Shengjin, the head of security at Hongfa, who worked for his brother. But after the incident, he disappeared, so Lei had to hold back. For 10 years he lived as a spoiled rich kid, waiting for his chance to take revenge. One of his security guards confirms the information given by the protagonist. Then Lei says he needs to leave and thanks him, stating that he is willing to help Chang with anything he needs. The protagonist thinks that only 2 days have passed in this new life, and he has already secured 2 strong alliances. But now he needs to collect his 20 million from the bet. However, when he tries calling her, the number appears unavailable. He assumes Lai Rubing is still mad about his provocation and decides to head home. A little while later, he stops at a red light. The protagonist is still driving Wang's car. Then he looks to the side and sees a luxurious car, and inside it is Su Qingying, known as the most beautiful woman in China. She was the woman who impressed the protagonist the most in his past life, and now that they have just crossed paths, he intends to flirt with her a little. From inside his car, he waves at her, but the girl completely ignores him. Since that didn't work, he tries a different approach and sends her a message, thinking that she will be surprised to see that he knows her number, and, out of curiosity, will end up replying. Then the protagonist receives a notification, but it's from his brother-in-law. Sometime later they meet, and Ru Tai presents his brother-in-law with a massive house, saying that it now belongs to him. He says it's a gift for his health and adds that if his sister is pregnant, she can't be having a child in a bad house. Then he asks for the protagonist's documents to transfer the property into his name. The next morning on July 10th, a woman arrives at the company's reception, looking for Lai Rubing. She introduces herself as Tao Manning. The receptionist says that the president is in a meeting at the moment, and that she will notify her. Meanwhile, in the meeting room, Lai Rubing is desperate, as the conference is in 13 minutes, and she still doesn't have a representative. She has no idea that the protagonist's plan worked, as she hadn't answered his calls earlier. Then she receives a message from the receptionist, informing her that Tao Manning is at the company and wants to speak with her. Shortly after, the two meet. Lai Rubing says she was busy, which is why she didn't respond immediately. Tao in turn simply compliments her and her boyfriend. Lai Rubing asks how she and Chang met. Tao Manning says she doesn't know him personally, but he knows her manager, which is why she came to the meeting. Lai Rubing wasn't expecting that. Either way, Tao says she is in a bit of a hurry and wants to sign the contract right away. So Lai Rubing immediately asks her assistant for the contract. Thus, the two agree to work together. Later, she meets with the protagonist, and he asks for at least an apology. Lai Rubing asks how he managed to pull it off. Cheng says she's asking too many questions and states that a magician never reveals his tricks. He also tells her not to change the subject and to apologize. Realizing that there's no way out, Lai Rubing removes her shoes and kneels before the protagonist. Just as they greet, apologizing for doubting him, Cheng notices that she is embarrassed and tells her to stand up, but he decides to tease her a little more, saying he got excited seeing her like that. Suddenly, she receives a call. The person on the other end reveals that the Su family is investigating her boyfriend. After hanging up, Lai Rubing asks why the Su family is after the protagonist. He responds that it's better if she doesn't get involved. Because of the mystery, Lai Rubing asks if the protagonist is acting this way just to get her attention and if, by any chance, he has ended up falling for her. Cheng says that she is neither the most beautiful nor the richest woman he has met and mentions that she makes weird faces in front of strangers due to her overconfidence. So there's no reason to fall in love. Lai Rubing says that Cheng seems to know many women and asks if they are really as incredible as he described. The protagonist says that he used to have many women before, but not so much nowadays. He can't say if all of them were amazing, but he is sure that Lai Rubing is not the most beautiful. She gets irritated and tells Cheng to give an example. However, he says that would be an invasion of privacy and refuses to fall into her trap. Lai Rubing then says that if he can't even name one, that's fine because, either way, she wouldn't believe his lies. After that, the protagonist receives a phone call. It's Su Qingying who wants to meet him in person and asks if they can arrange a meeting. Cheng asks if it has to be in person. She says yes, claiming that some matters need to be handled that way, and she wants to meet him at Tang She's private club headquarters the next day. Lai Rubing asks if Su Qingying is one of the women the protagonist was talking about. He says not yet, but she might be in a few days. Although she doesn't know Su Qingying personally, Lai has heard about her business, as it's no secret to the public. Her father focused on his own career and married late, so by the time Su Qingying was born, he was already old and raised her like nobility. Even when she studied abroad, guards watched over her 24/7 just to ensure she wouldn't fall in love too soon. After he became ill, her father wanted to arrange a marriage for his daughter, and the conditions were strict. The Su family never lets its guard down. Su Qingying is well-behaved and always listens to her family, so Lai Rubing assumes the protagonist is not a marriage prospect. So she tells the protagonist that he will never have relationship with Su Qingying, but her doubt makes Cheng suggest another bet. She accepts, and the protagonist asks if Lai Rubing isn't afraid of losing again. She replies that she just wants to bet. Cheng then asks for 3 days to make Su Qingying his for the rest of her life. Lai Rubing says he can take 30, and if he loses, she wants Cheng to apologize on his knees. But if she loses, she asks what Cheng wants her to do. He holds her by the waist and says he needs to think about it. Lai Rubing says that either way, she has already placed the bet, and if she loses, she will accept the consequences. On the day of the meeting, the protagonist arrives at the location and says he has an appointment with Su Qingying. The staff already knew he was coming, and they escort him to where Su Qingying is. So the protagonist takes a golf cart and finds Su Qingying play. Right away, she asks how the protagonist found out about that matter. Cheng says that's not important. Su Qingying then asks what his price is, but Cheng says he's not blackmailing her. She says that only makes her more suspicious of them. The protagonist asks why she doesn't have any guards around if she's so worried, and suggests putting him in a situation where he has no choice but to tell the truth. She responds that she knows he's Lai Rubing's boyfriend and wouldn't do anything to put him in danger since she knows his girlfriend well. Then Cheng grabs her and says he will have to do something to earn her trust. Su Qingying asks what he's doing and doesn't like being held like that, but the protagonist simply says he's teaching her how to play golf. After all, now she has the evidence she needs. Su Qingying thinks that he is Lai Rubing's boyfriend, and if that possessive woman knew he was holding her like this, she would never believe they were just playing golf, and she would definitely kill him. So she concludes that the protagonist should be the one afraid, not her. And the more she resists, the more she understands how he deals with the idea of death. Her guards are stunned and don't know whether to intervene or not. Su Qingying asks if the protagonist isn't afraid that she will call his girlfriend and tell her what's happening. He replies that he is, but he also knows that she is afraid too, since he can expose her secret. That puts them in a similar situation. So Su Qingying asks if he did all this just to give her something to blackmail and with. Cheng tells her not to say such nonsense. He also tells her to keep playing and not to stick her butt out when hitting the ball, claiming that her coach should have taught her that before. The guards decide to take action, so they call their boss to report what's happening. Meanwhile, the protagonist continues getting golf tips. He tells Su Qingying to position her legs properly and extend her arms before making the swing. Then he tells her that her pelvis is tilted forward and advises her to tuck it in slightly. After that, she performs the move and asks if she did it correctly. Cheng responds that she did, but unfortunately, he won't be able to teach her anything else. Su Qingying asks why. He says that her mother has probably sent someone to capture him. Speaking of her mother, she receives a report from the guards and orders them to keep an eye on her daughter because she is on her way and must not let this man escape. Realizing that her mother is coming, Su Qingying asks what they should do. The protagonist says they can run and discuss it later. Su Qingying hesitates, wondering if she should really do this. Cheng asks if she plans to live like this forever. Seeing Su Qingying trapped in her thoughts, he holds her hand, telling her not to think about it now and just run. The guards chase after them, but they don't catch up in time. Soon, they inform her mother that Su Qingying has fooled with the protagonist. With her in the car, Cheng speeds up and asks if Su Qingying is scared. She replies that she isn't. After that, she receives a call from her mother. The protagonist says that maybe one day, Su Qingying will consider being independent. Still torn, she decides to answer. Her mother asks where she is. Su Qingying replies that she went out with a friend. Yelling, her mother says that she has no friends and that she didn't raise her to run away with a man, claiming to be disappointed in her. She orders her daughter to return home immediately. The protagonist rolls down the car window. Meanwhile, Su Qingying realizes that because of him, she has chosen independence. Then she tells her mother that she is a human being, not a breathing puppet, and throws the phone out of the window. Cheng says that her mother will likely mobilize all of her family's power to find her. She says that her mother is afraid of losing her reputation, so she won't cause a public scene. The protagonist asks if she isn't afraid of him. Su Qingying replies that no one has ever dared to get close to her. She has always lived a false life, feeling distant and different from everyone around her. She was forced to live according to her family's expectations and was never allowed to be anything else, which left her exhausted. Now running with the protagonist seems to be her only chance to feel like a real person. Cheng tells her that she made the right choice. Su Qingying asks if he is really Lai Rubing's boyfriend, and if he isn't afraid of her finding out what they are doing. But before he can answer, Su Qingying grabs him and kisses him. Cheng tells her that he is driving, and that this is not the best time for that. She says she just felt like doing it. The protagonist tells her to stay quiet while he's driving, but he thinks to himself that Su Qingying has a hidden quality, one he explored well during his Time Loot days. He remembers when she completely surrendered to him, proving that she was the most beautiful woman in China. And to satisfy his curiosity about how she became such a high-class model, Su Qingying even opened her computer and logged into a forum in front of them. Looking at that post, the protagonist realized that the perfect and glamorous image she had maintained over the years was actually a burden that weighed heavily on her. So the post didn't just reveal chains and masks, but also textual evidence of her hidden submissive nature. Cheng just never imagined that one day he would have to use that trait to his advantage. He asks where Su Qingying wants to go. She says she wants to go to his house because she wants to do something to please him. 4 hours later, after the drive, the protagonist finds himself lying in bed with her when his phone rings. His brother-in-law says that people from the Su family have come to his house looking for the protagonist and asks what he is doing. Cheng simply says it's nothing and that he will handle it. Then he receives a call from Lai Rubing. She says that she was also approached and asks what the protagonist has done. Cheng simply hands the phone to Su Qingying and tells her to say whatever she wants, without worrying about who is listening. Lai Rubing asks who he is talking to. He says she will find out soon enough. Then Su Qingying answers the call and speaks with her girlfriend. Rubing asks what her relationship with the protagonist is. Su Qingying replies that they are just friends. However, Lai Rubing immediately senses that something is off and asks Su Qingying to hand the phone back to her boyfriend. She asks where Cheng is. He replies that he is at the villa that her brother gifted him. Soon, Rubing tells him not to leave because she is on her way. Su Qingying asks if the protagonist isn't afraid of his girlfriend. He responds that, in fact, the relationship is just for show, but that's a secret. This makes Su Qingying realize that it's just like Rubing's other 3 relationships. The protagonist says that not even his girlfriend's brother knows about this and asks Su Qingying not to tell anyone. She says she won't, as she doesn't want any trouble. Now she understands that this is why the protagonist has been so calm all along, because he had no reason to be afraid. Cheng asks if she regrets what she did. Su Qingying says no. Meanwhile, Lai Rubing thinks it doesn't make sense for Su Qingying to be with Cheng, as she doesn't believe she is that kind of woman. But then she realizes that, in the same mysterious way, the protagonist managed to convince Teo to work with her, and she concludes that he is like a deity, unfathomable and mysterious. A short time later, she arrives at the protagonist's house, and walks in as if it were normal. Looking around and asking for Su Qingying, The protagonist points in a direction, showing that Su Qingying is in the kitchen. Su Qingying sees Miss Li and greets her formally. Rubing does the same but finds it hard to believe that the Su Qingying she knows is actually cooking for the protagonist. She calls the protagonist love, saying they can talk without her since she's still finishing dinner. Rubing asks what's going on. Cheng says it's nothing special, he's just with his real girlfriend. Lei asks when that happened. Chen replies that it was just today. She asks if they knew each other before. He says no. This only makes Rubing even more confused, until Su Qingying says the food is almost ready, and asks the protagonist to keep an eye on it while she goes to the bathroom. She also tells Miss Li not to stand around waiting and suggests she take a seat and wait for dinner. Rubing calls the protagonist to talk alone. Before that, Su Qingying says the washing machine has finished and asks the protagonist to hang the clothes. Her words and actions make Li realize that the protagonist truly has Su Qingying wrapped around his finger. This makes her feel uneasy. After that, they all sit down for dinner. Rubing notices that Su Qingying is about to feed the protagonist, and thinks that level of intimacy is too much. Seeing how naturally the protagonist acts, Lai thinks that if Su Qingying keeps behaving like this, she will lose her focus and concludes that she must take the initiative and strike first. So she asks how long the two have known each other. Su Qingying says it hasn't been long but claims it was love at first sight. Lai thinks that's practically impossible, especially knowing how Su was raised. Then Su Qingying says that the protagonist has already told her they aren't really a couple, but she tells Miss Li not to worry, her secret is safe, and she asks her to also keep it a secret that she is dating Cheng. The protagonist asks why Rubing is staring and so much. Meanwhile, Su Qingying can only think about how her relationship is real while Li's is not. Lei Rubing, on the other hand, realizes she is being provoked. She then decides to play along. With that, Li picks up a shrimp and feeds it to the protagonist. Even noticing Su Qingying's discomfort, he eats the shrimp given by Li, and an awkward silence fills the air. Then Cheng says he is full and compliments the food. Su Qingying is pleased and says she will clean up while he talks with Miss Li. After she steps away from the table, Lai Rubing asks what the protagonist is up to, and pulls him by the arm to talk in private. But due to her urgency and them holding hands, they end up tripping and fall into the floor. The protagonist tells Lei Rubing to take it easy and questions why she's asking so many questions. Besides, he wants to talk about the bet and the fact that she lost. He asks if she will really admit defeat as promised. The protagonist says he's very tired since he has been busy all day and his body is sore, so he asks if Rubing can give him a massage. Even though she is angry, she asks if it will be there or in the bedroom. 10 minutes later, Su Qingying looks for the two but doesn't see them anywhere, until she hears a sound coming from the bedroom and finds the protagonist receiving a massage. She is shocked to see what Lai Rubing is doing, wondering how a woman of her caliber could be serving a man like that. Su Qingying realizes that Miss Lai didn't care about her presence and wonders if the situation is the same as hers. If that's the case, both could be of the same kind, true allies. This means Wu Cheng is more powerful than she imagined. Then she walks over to the two of them, and as she approaches Li, she asks if the two of them can do the massage. Rubing can't believe it because Su saw her boyfriend being massaged by another woman, yet not only was she calm about it, but she even joined in. She then wonders if Su Qingying is crazy or something because this is completely different from what she herself would do in a situation like this. She also questions what the protagonist did to win such love, until Su Qingying asks what she is thinking. The protagonist tells Su Qingying to stop the massage and not to forget her medication. This reinforces the idea in Li's mind that Su is crazy, but then she realizes that can't be the case. So she asks the protagonist to clarify things, but he demands at Billion to tell the truth. Rubing doesn't want to play games and decides not to ask any more questions about how they fell in love, but she does want to know about the Su family's investigation. The protagonist explains that Su Qingying ran away from Huan, which is why her family is after her. Lai Rubing asks what he is going to do about it. Cheng says he can handle the Su family, but she reminds him that to everyone else, he is her boyfriend, not Su Qingying's. The protagonist says he is aware of that. Then Li asks if the Su family doesn't know that she is his girlfriend, because if that's the case, she will handle it herself. Lai also asks why Su Qingying ran away from Huan. Cheng replies that she has lived like a puppet her full life, but now she has decided to take control of her own life, and he helped her do that. Moments later, Su Qingying calls and says that her family is downstairs at the house, but Cheng reassures her, saying he will go down to handle it. Then he declares that he will take care of the Su family issue. However, Lei Rubing asks if he already knew this would happen, and if that's why he asked her to come to his house. She doesn't like this at all, and says that he is manipulating people without caring about their feelings, but the protagonist insists that he didn't plan this, and it was all just a coincidence. Lai decides to believe him but states that she doesn't like this feeling at all. Cheng says that her words sound like something a spoiled child would say. Then he holds her hand, saying that they will present themselves as a couple. Next he approaches the Su family men, who demand the presence of Miss Su Qingying. Lai Rubing asks if they are there to cause trouble for her or her boyfriend. The guards say this is a misunderstanding, and that they are only there to take Su Qingying back to her mother. She then asks if they are accusing her boyfriend of kidnapping another woman. They don't know how to respond, until Su Qingying appears and says that she was not kidnapped. She also tells them not to use her mother's name to cause trouble, and that what happens between mother and daughter is none of their business. But then her mother steps out of the car and introduces herself. Lai Rubing remarks that it has been a while since she last saw the lady, and both formally acknowledge each other. The lady then walks up to the protagonist, saying that he is indeed talented and impressive, just as the rumors claim, and compliments Miss Li's taste. Lai Rubing thanks her for the compliment. The lady says that this is not the appropriate place for a conversation. Li agrees, saying they should go inside to discuss things properly. Before that, she gives a single glance at Su Qingying, which terrifies the girl. Getting straight to the point, Madame Su asks why Miss Li was with her daughter and says that it was inappropriate, even if it was her boyfriend acting on her behalf. She also states that this could be interpreted as a crime, and that she might need to consult her lawyer. Lai says she intended to meet with Su Qingying but due to unforeseen circumstances, asked her boyfriend to go in her place. Then she asks why she heard that her daughter was taken by force. In response, Lai says that Su Qingying is old enough to make her own decisions and wouldn't have been forced into anything, but she emphasizes that the most important matter is the reason for their meeting. She then explains that Su Qingying has been living like a puppet all this time and doesn't even have control over her own life. That's why Su Qingying advised her and longs to become a woman like Miss Lai. The madam doesn't like hearing that. Even so, Li continues. She says that Su Qingying wanted to meet her and hoped that she could be a great help. Soon, Lai stated that she became curious about how she could help her. Lai shows a medicine and says she is taking it because Su Qingying bought it for her. The madam asks what the problem with that is. Rubing says that the problem isn't the medicine itself, but the simple fact that buying it made Su Qingying happy, because she had never bought medicine on her own in her entire life. Su Qingying has just realized that Miss Lai is winning her mother over with her argument. Even the protagonist is impressed by this, mentally praising her eloquence and logical reasoning. Lai Rubing continues. She says that Su Qingying is extremely upset, and that today, her act of rebellion was simply going to a pharmacy and buying medicine. But she asks what will happen next time, and what Su Qingying will do when there is no one around to stop her. The whole room remains silent for about 3 minutes until Madame Su asked if she should be grateful to Miss Lai. She replies that Su Qingying is her friend, so there is no need for thanks. Until now, the protagonist had remained silent, but he thinks that now is the time to stir things up, so he says that he has been working hard alongside his girlfriend, helping Su Qingying for no reason, but he is also getting tired of this whole situation. Rubing is startled by this but realizes that Cheng is just giving her an opening, so she says that Su Qingying is her friend, and it's no burden to help her. However, Cheng says that she has been helping Su Qingying out of fear that she might do something reckless, yet she hasn't received anything in return, so she says that Su Qingying doesn't deserve her help. Lai Rubing tells her boyfriend to calm down, and reinforces that Su Qingying is her friend, so she doesn't want to argue in front of guests. Su Qingying sees this and thinks that if she didn't know they were acting, even she would fall for it. Soon, her mother says that perhaps she really should thank Miss Li and understands that she had good intentions. She also says that she sees her daughter's side of things and will give her more freedom from now on, expressing gratitude for her friendship with Miss Li. Rubing says that her friendship with Su Qingying is wonderful, and that everyone likes her. The madam says that she is leaving now and won't bother them anymore. She now understands that she has been too strict a mother, and won't pressure her daughter any longer. She also says that Su Qingying can stay there with them tonight, but must go to the family company tomorrow. After that, she leaves the protagonist's house, and everyone breathes a sigh of relief as it worked. Cheng says that the first stage of the plan is complete. Lai Rubing makes sure that Su Qingying's mother has really left and notices that she hasn't left any bodyguards or spies behind. Su Qingying hugs the protagonist, saying that he really seemed angry just now. Cheng insists that he was only acting. After that, he says it's time to do business, and thinks about who he should call first. However, Lai Rubing stops him from doing so. She says that everything has been resolved and that he can continue seeing Su Qingying, so she asks what more he wants. Cheng tells Su Qingying that they are having an affair and asks if she wants to continue meeting him in the future, claiming that he himself doesn't like this situation. He says that if that's the case, he has the means and the responsibility to ensure she isn't put in a difficult position, and doesn't want her to have to choose between love and family. Cheng says that soon he will start contacting other people because he wants Su Qingying to take control of her family and become the CEO as quickly as possible. This will prevent her mother from controlling her and will make her realize that she can no longer command a powerful person. Furthermore, her father will be pleased to see his daughter in a position of power, But for that to happen, he says that Su Qingyin must be willing. The girl thinks about it for a moment, and with all the determination in the world, says that she is willing to do anything. That was exactly what the protagonist wanted to hear, and he says that he will begin the operation immediately. The girls watch the protagonist, until Su Qingyin notices that Miss Lai is very close to Hen, so she says she wants him too. With that, the protagonist feels suffocated, and says that if they want to listen as well, he can put the phone on speaker. Then the person picks up the call. The protagonist says that Bai Kaithing asked him to call because he heard that this man has made quite a lot of money recently. The man keeps asking who it is, but Cheng simply says he will wait for him at the tea house in an hour and hangs up. Lei asks if the protagonist can get into the Su family's head just with what he said now. He responds with only 2 words, internal disintegration. She says the protagonist shouldn't be so sure, but seeing how he is, Cheng suggests another bet, which Lei refuses. An hour later, at the meeting place, the protagonist tells the 2 women to wait outside because he is going in alone. As soon as Cheng enters the room, he sees that his guest has arrived right on time. The man quickly stands up. He is Yao Hongli, a director and shareholder of a major company. He makes sure the door is properly closed. Then he asks the protagonist if he was the one who spoke on the phone earlier. Cheng confirms, so Yao asks what Bai Kaithing and the protagonist want from Hen. He also says that the kid can't blackmail Hen just because he knows his secrets, and that if he is smart, he should state what he wants to know, and you will receive a large sum of money. The protagonist says they will talk about money later, and that since Yao is dangerous, he can't simply provide information without guarantees. Yao tells the protagonist not to make baseless accusations. Cheng then asks about the money buried in Barren Mountain, and says that with advanced technology, cases that were once impossible to solve are no longer out of reach. This leaves Yao desperate. He quickly offers 150 million for the protagonist to keep quiet, but Cheng tells him not to be impatient, and says he has heard that the boss's business is failing, and that he is relying on falsified accounts to avoid losses. Furious, Yao raises the offer to 300 million but says that's his limit. However, just then, the 2 women enter the room. Immediately, Yao recognizes Su Qingyin, and asks what she and Li Rubing are doing there. The protagonist says they arrived quickly and heard everything. Su Qingyin asks if Mr. Yao really killed people. He is extremely embarrassed to discuss this in front of her. Then the protagonist says they are not here to talk about the past now. Getting straight to the point, he says he doesn't want money. What he wants is for Yao to support everything Miss Su says in meetings. Yao asks if that's really all. He quickly adds that he was already thinking he was going to die or something and states that none of this was necessary for him to grant Su Qingyin a request, as he would never refuse her. He knows that Su Qingyin is the successor of her family, and that, no matter what happens, she will eventually take over the company. So Yao doesn't mind being used as long as the crisis is resolved and his information isn't leaked. For that reason, he assures them that he will do as agreed without hesitation. This way, the protagonist trusts his word, and the 2 part ways. Lei asks if that's really all because just a single supporter won't be enough, and the other board members won't get in so easily. The protagonist doesn't seem concerned about that. Then, Lei Rubing says that blackmailing someone is very serious, and that if things go wrong, it could cause major trouble. After all, there are many important directors in the group. However, Cheng says he doesn't need them all, just the majority, and that with this one now, 5 more will be enough. He tells the 2 to stay there while he handles other matters. After that, the protagonist goes after each of his targets one by one because he knows each of their weaknesses. By the end of the day, he bids farewell to the girls because he wants to leave. Lei Rubing points out that even with 6 directors, that would only be a third of the board, and for this to work, they need more than half. So she asks how Cheng plans to solve that. He simply says that some things are complicated to explain, and that she will see the magic happen the next day. He also says he would like to settle some matters with Su Qingyin, and asks if he could stay at Lei's house that night. She says maybe, but she doesn't want to lead the 2 alone, and so she goes fun with them. Upon arriving, Cheng tells Su Qingyin to take a bath, and alone with Rubing, he asks why she hates Su Qingyin. She simply pulls him close, saying she'll shut him up with a kiss. As he kisses her, the protagonist thinks that Su Qingyin just got into the bath, and will be out soon. No matter what Rubing is thinking, this is not the right moment. He suspects that Lai is just acting, probably trying to fool a paparazzi or something like that. With that in mind, Cheng decides he might as well enjoy the moment and deceive Dean Rulan, wherever he may be. He was right because there really was a paparazzo. A few minutes later, the protagonist says that she must have left by now. Lei Rubing realizes that Cheng already knew about the photographer, and understands why he was so relaxed. Meanwhile, in the city of Guan, in the south, at the headquarters of Rulon Corporation, Ding Rulon watches everything that the paparazzo sent him and sees with rage, and he swears on everything sacred that he will kill the protagonist. After that, he calls a trusted subordinate named Jiang Chuan, a former Special Forces soldier, and tells him to go to eastern China to find a man named Wu Cheng and kill him, ordering that it be done in the most painful way possible. Jiang Chuan says that this territory belongs to Li Teruo and that he will need 5 days before he can leave. But his boss says he can't wait that long, and that he wants the target dead within 3 days. The next day, the protagonist wakes up with Su Qingying beside him and wakes her up. Su Qingying says she hasn't slept enough. However, Cheng tells her to save her sleep for when she finishes her work, and asks if she remembers their agreement. Su Qingying says yes, and knows that today is the day that will determine the success or failure of her future. Then, Lei Rubing appears, saying that she will take Su Qingying to the company. As soon as Su Qingying arrives at the company, employees start reporting various matters to her, but she says they will discuss everything in the meeting later. Then she says goodbye to Miss Lei, and enters the building to work. Sometime later, the executive meeting of Jinfu Corporation begins. Su Qingying suggests firing Zhu Da and Yang Kuo, but her mother disagrees and questions her actions. However, Su Qingying states that she is the vice president of the company and a board member, so she has the right to propose this agenda. She says that, due to her position, she doesn't need all the directors to approve a dismissal, so she instructs that the employees be notified as soon as the meeting ends. Her mother asks what those two did wrong and demands a reasonable justification, arguing that it is the company's fault that this incident led to labor arbitration, and that the resulting news will be significant for their reputation. However, the protagonist had arranged everything with Su Qingying beforehand, so she is prepared and says she has sufficient reason to fire them. She claims that 5 years ago, there was a major theft in the company's warehouse. It was their largest warehouse and had the most advanced security system, and despite all that, the warehouse was robbed. The outside world began questioning their security capabilities. This caused a drop in stock value, and the company's overall worth fell to 40 billion. By common sense, Zhu Da, the security director, should have been held accountable, but he didn't seem to care. This highlights a weakness in the company. That is why Su Qingying argues that Zhu Da must be fired to restore the company's value. Her mother agrees with this reasoning but asks why Yang Kuo should be fired. Su Qingying states that Yang Kuo doesn't even work at the company. He is listed as an employee but is actually just a private bodyguard, which is more than enough reason to dismiss him. Madame Su thinks that none of this really matters because she concludes that her daughter is simply looking for an excuse to rebel. So she instructs that all the directors be notified because she wants a meeting with them later that same day. At Lai's company, she asks why Cheng is there instead of with Su. He replies that for now he will just observe her actions and nothing more. Lai sees the protagonist drawing and asks what it is. Cheng responds that he is drawing her. He thinks that the photos taken yesterday must have been ordered by Ding Rulon, and that he is probably preparing to act at any moment. Meanwhile, Cheng insists that he wants to make a drawing of Li Rubing, but she says she is busy with work and can't pay attention to him. The protagonist tells her that she can do whatever she wants and just pretend he isn't there. He is part of a group focused on sketches and drawings. In general, there are people in this group who just want to learn how to draw. But what interests the protagonist is that there is someone in the group who has a close relationship with Ding Rulon. That is why Cheng started doing this. He sends a photo of his drawing, which is praised by the other members. 40 minutes later, among so many compliments, even job offers start to appear. However, the person the protagonist is targeting has yet to make a move, until finally, the target takes the bait. This person holds a special position among Ding Rulon's women. The reason she has such a special position is that they have an illegitimate daughter together, and that child is now 14 years old. The person in question is the mother of the child, who asks the protagonist if he can help her daughter with her drawings. She believes that getting guidance from one of the best specialists is necessary because she has faith in her child's talent. On the other hand, the protagonist thinks this was easier than expected. He exchanges messages with the child's mother for a while, managing to arrange a meeting with her in person. Cheng thinks the plan is going as expected, and that now it's time to do what needs to be done. He plans to bring the child's mother closer and take control over her, because this woman is the crucial key to the material that could incriminate Ding Rulon. So he tells Lai that he's going out to take care of something and asks her to continue her work. The protagonist thinks that besides the mother and daughter, there are other things that also need to be handled. Next, he makes a call and tells the person on the other end that he has already figured out that they are a double agent and asks what Ding Rulon will do if he finds out as well. The person claims they don't know what he's talking about, so Cheng asks if he should go to Li Taro now. The person responds that he shouldn't and that they want to talk. Then Cheng tells them to do exactly as he says. He quickly arranges a meeting for later and says he will send the details by email. Back at Su Qingying's company, her mother and the others prepare to start the meeting. Su Qingying states that most of them should already be aware of the specific agenda for the board meeting, which was originally a minor issue, but since the meeting has been set, she makes it clear that everyone is free to express their opinions and arguments, whether for or against. Such a statement sounds powerful to the others. However, since some of them are in collusion with the protagonist, they already know what to do. So Qingying's mother praises her poise as a director, but still she claims that the issue raised is not viable and will not pass. She argues in favor of the employees listed for dismissal, something that makes the board think she has a valid point. Soon Madame Su believes her victory is assured, as she usually has the majority of the board on her side, and even her daughter hasn't argued against her. Some present comment that Madame Su's arguments make sense. However, Su Qingying says that endless discussion won't lead anywhere and suggests a vote on whether to dismiss the mentioned employees. Her mother can't believe she just did that, until she sees one of the board members voting in favor and thinks it's a miracle that he raised his hand. But soon after, more members vote in favor of the motion. Madame Su's sense of desperation escalates dramatically, because people she never imagined would do so are surprising her, including Chen Lei. She recalls that Chen Lei entered the company as a secretary, and that Madame Su herself was the one who promoted her. Therefore, she expected at least some loyalty. But Su Qingying tells her mother not to interfere with the votes. Madame Su now finds herself cornered, and she no longer interferes with the voting. Previously, the protagonist had said that not everyone needs to speak because some just need to witness Su Qingying's assertiveness as a display of power, and they will naturally follow her. She remembers this and thinks she needs to be even more convincing, so she asks who else is in favor of the dismissal. Tang Dayang, the oldest in the group, had not yet voted, but after this he raises his hand. He is the brother of Madame Su's husband, which is why she is shocked by his vote. Her brother-in-law says that Su Qingying has grown and become a wise person. However, Madame Su is absolutely furious and disagrees with him. She then states that Su Qingying only has 9 votes and wants to see if her daughter will really cause problems. She asserts that the board requires 2/3 of the votes for major issues and 1/3 for minor issues. The current matter is a minor issue, and even though Su Qingying has half, she still needs 1 more vote. Su Qingying recalls that the protagonist warned her that the most important thing was not converting others, but making her mother back down, because that would define her victory or defeat. So Su Qingying asks her mother if she is sure about this. She tells her mother that she can vote against it since she is the president's wife, and everyone will listen to her. But she says this is not a personal matter. It concerns the company, and she hopes her mother will think clearly about what she is doing. Su Qingying asks how long her mother wants the family to be a joke in front of others. Hearing this makes her mother realize that if Su Qingying does not win this vote, it will cause a huge conflict within the Su family and split the board of directors into 2 opposing groups. This will create chaos within the company and lead to poor performance. The stock value will also drop, leaving no hope for Su Qingying to succeed in the company, and with internal conflicts, the company will go bankrupt and collapse. She feels torn about what to do, wondering what has happened to her family. Then the madam leaves the meeting room, without saying a single word. So Qingying continues the vote, asking who else will support her. She then sees that everyone present has agreed, so Su Qingying concludes the meeting, knowing that from this moment on both the Su family and the Jinyu group will completely change. After the meeting, Yu Fu calls the protagonist and invites him to lunch. Cheng asks if there is a problem with Boss Lu. He responds that there is and that he needs help with a few things. The protagonist realizes that it is still early for his meeting with the double agent, so he decides to accept the invitation. Later he arrives at the meeting location and meets with Lu Guignian. The man shows a wound on his head and says that when he tried to reconcile with his first love, she threw a cup at him and kicked him out. Then he asks if the protagonist can help. Cheng tells him not to rush, as the situation will be resolved gradually, and everything will be fine. Lu Guignian worries that he won't be able to turn things around. Then Cheng asks what exactly he did. He says he went to see the mother of his child, bought her a bouquet and jewelry, and even purchased a Ferrari for their son. The protagonist says that this gives the impression that Yu Fu is trying to buy her, which might come across as bribery or something similar. The woman told Lu Guignian that she did not want to see him and promised to move again to get away from him for good. Lu Guignian asks the protagonist what he should do. Cheng says there are 2 options. The first is to start with the child, which may take some time, but for the sake of their son, the mother will gradually forgive him. The second option can be resolved quickly. So Cheng asks which one Lu Guignian prefers. He chooses the second and asks what he should do. Lu Guignian says that if it is about money, he can transfer whatever is needed right away. But Cheng tells him that not everything is about money, and explains that the method involves Lu Guignian enduring some suffering, to to which he responds that he is willing. Then the protagonist tells him that if he can be ruthless and set aside his pride, they can proceed. Sometime later, after receiving all the instructions, the protagonist sits in a monitoring room, watching Lu Guangnian. The man goes to his beloved's house, but she refuses to answer the door. Lu Guangnian insists on seeing her, claiming he has something important to say. Ma Kufang says she doesn't want to hear anything from him and tells him to leave her house. Mr. Lu says he brought food with him, the same kind they used to eat in the past. But in anger, she throws the food away, declaring that she doesn't want anything he offers. Lu tries to pick the food up from the ground, until his son appears and tells him to leave at once. Ma Kufang tells her son to stay out of it and go back inside. After half an hour of arguing, some security guards arrive and say that both of them are disturbing the entire neighborhood, and advise them to take their discussion indoors so as not to bother others. However, Ma Kufang speaks up, declaring that they are not a family and asking the guards to remove the man from her property. The guards try to escort Lu Guangnian away, but he insists that she is his wife and refuses to leave. In the midst of the argument, Lu Guangnian insults the guards and pushes one of them. Because of this, they get angry and begin to retaliate. Lu Guangnian insists on staying, claiming that he will only leave if he is carried out dead. From a distance, the protagonist admires his performance and looks forward to what will happen next. After this, Lu Guangnian's son speaks up in his defense, as he does not like seeing his father being beaten right in front of them. Then Ma Kufang herself shouts, telling everyone to stop fighting. Then she tells Lu Guangnian to get up, and even holds his hand. Back to the protagonist, he thanks the guards for their cooperation, praises their work, and thinks that the outcome was exactly as expected. The guards say that if the couple has another argument, they can make the experience even more realistic. However, the protagonist says it won't be necessary anymore, and wants to let Lu act on his own now, because Cheng has other matters to handle. On the way to the meeting, the double agent calls the protagonist, and asks if he is going to show up or not. Cheng says he will arrive soon. A few minutes later, he reaches the location, and sarcastically apologizes for making him wait. The double agent, Meng Junhao, had been waiting for him, accompanied by his security team. Cheng asks if Meng really wants his subordinates to hear what he has to say about his secret. Irritated, Meng asks who the protagonist really is. Immediately, Cheng tells him to calm down because he dislikes this hostile behavior and prefers to have a civilized conversation. Then Cheng calls his brother-in-law. As soon as the double agent hears Li Ruote's voice, he realizes that the protagonist is his brother-in-law, which matches the rumors he had heard. Ruote asks if the protagonist is having trouble. Cheng says there is a traitor among them, and that they need to deal with it immediately. His brother-in-law asks who it is and states that he will take care of it right away. Upon hearing this, Meng Junhao drops to his knees before the protagonist and begs not to be exposed. So Cheng gives him a fake name, as he now has the leverage to negotiate properly with the double agent. Meng Junhao is willing to do whatever the protagonist tells him. Soon after, they sit down to talk. Then, Lu Guangnian calls Cheng, but the protagonist says he can't answer now because he is handling something. Lu Guangnian says that any problem Cheng has is his as well and offers to come to him. That's exactly what the protagonist wanted, so he gives him the address. Cheng tells the double agent that a guest will be joining them, but asks him not to worry. After that, he says that Meng is an interesting person, as he became one of Ding Rulan's employees 4 years ago and gained his trust, taking charge of security in residential areas near the Li brothers' company. But 6 months ago, the truth was exposed, and he barely escaped. So immediately, he sold himself out to Ding. Meng says he doesn't need any more confirmation and asks what the protagonist needs him to do, assuring that he will comply. Cheng says that soon, Ding Rulan will send someone to kill them. But the double agent replies that gathering information and dealing with that directly is not part of his responsibilities. The protagonist is aware of that and simply tells Meng to follow Ding's orders as instructed when he receives the call. With that, Meng asks if he should inform them in advance so they can put on a performance or something similar. Cheng says that won't be necessary, and that he also didn't inform Ruote of the truth, ensuring that the double agent stays alive. Mei understands that his role is simply to act as he normally would, so he wonders why all of this is happening. Cheng tells him that he doesn't need to understand. He only needs Meng to deliver something to Ding Rulan at the right moment. Shortly after, Lu Guangnian arrives at the location. He asks Meng if he is trying to cause trouble for Cheng. Meng replies that he is not, and the protagonist confirms, claiming that they are all friends here. Lu Guangnian is relieved to hear this because he states that anyone who threatens to lay a finger on Cheng is also threatening him. With that, the protagonist completes his plan. He set all of this up, aiming to strengthen his alliances and use them to his advantage in the future. His phone rings, it's Mu Qian calling him. Cheng hears that she is in front of his house now, so he bids farewell to the gentleman and leaves. The girl is crying on the phone, saying that her parents want to send her abroad. The protagonist asks if that's all, but she emphasizes that she doesn't want to go and wants Chang's help, so he tells Mu-chan where the spare key is and asks her to wait inside the house. A short time later, Su Qingyin also arrives at the house, but she forgets that she doesn't have the key. One of her security guards says he can open the door and have someone come later to fix it. She then authorizes him to do so. As soon as he opens the door, Mu-Qinan is shocked by what she sees. Su Qingyin is also surprised because she wasn't expecting another woman to be inside the house. As soon as the two meet, Su Qingyin asks what Mu-Qian is doing there since the protagonist is not born. Mu-Qian says that Cheng gave her the keys and told her to wait for him inside the house. She then asks why Su is there. Qingyin replies that she is a friend of Chen. Su, while taking off her shoes, asks how long Mu Chen has been waiting. Mu Chen notices that Miss Su is acting very naturally in the house, as if she lives there, and wonders what kind of relationship she has with the protagonist. In any case, Mu Qian says she hasn't been there for long, and that Cheng shouldn't take much longer to arrive home. Then Su tells the visitor to wait for him while she puts some things away. Mu Qian observes the entire situation, and realizes that Su is acting like she owns the place. Soon, she deduces that Su might actually be in relationship with the protagonist. So Qingyin offers the visitor a drink, further reinforcing the idea that she lives in the house. Then, being as direct as possible, Mu Qian asks if Miss Su has ever slept with the protagonist. Instead of answering, Su asks the same question to her, making Mu Qian think that Su is dodging the question. While Mu Qian sees Su as a rival due to her reputation and beauty, Su sees her only as a fleeting romance for the protagonist. She asks when they last met. Mu Qinan replies that it was a few days ago. Su Qingyin says that she can then consider her part of the family and claims that the two will get along well. Meanwhile, Cheng gets stuck in a traffic jam and only arrives home after nightfall. As soon as he opens the door, he smells food and asks if Mu Qian knows how to cook. However, what he sees is the two girls setting the dinner table. Su Qingyin says he arrived just in time and asks Cheng to wash his hands for dinner. This surprises everyone, but Cheng actually likes the idea of having Mu Qian as part of the family. She asks why Su acts as if they are married. The protagonist tries to dodge the question, but Mu Qian insists on an answer, until Su tells them not to argue and to just come to the table. Mu Qian realizes that, without noticing, she is already being treated as a younger sister by the couple. At the table, Cheng asks if anything unusual happened while he was away. Su says no, and that pleases him. Meanwhile, Mu Qian says it's fine if they show affection, but she wants to know the details. The protagonist hesitates, so Mu Qian says that if she doesn't learn the truth, she won't go wrong. Cheng then says that's fine since they have plenty of runes, and Su Qingyin is also staying. With that, Mu Qian thinks that she can't be blamed for whatever happens next. When bedtime comes, Su shows Mu Chen her rune, and says they need to sleep early for work the next day. However, Mu Qian enters the protagonist's room instead, and approaching his bed, she says she's going to sleep there and asks what they will do about it. Su simply walks toward the bed, and says she doesn't mind. Cheng then suggests that they all sleep together. After all, the bed is big. The next day he wakes up with both of them by his side. As always, Su doesn't want to get up yet. However, the protagonist answers a phone call, and Lei Rubing tells him that her father is at her company, and wants him to be there as soon as possible, because if they ruin their performance, all their efforts will be in vain. Cheng says he'll be there soon, but Lei Rubing realizes he isn't in any hurry at all, and pressures him to show up as quickly as possible. As soon as the protagonist arrives, Lei Rubing meets him at the building entrance. When he enters the room, he finds Lei Rubing's father and younger brother, and Lei Rubing immediately questions her father for not informing her about his visit. His name is Li Muren, the eldest son of his family. Li Muren asks if he needs to schedule an appointment to speak with his own daughter. She says that's not it, and that she was just caught off guard. Her father says that Rubing isn't even capable of looking after her younger brother, and that after so many scandals, he can't even come to Donghai. Rubing says that's not her fault, and her brother tries to intervene, saying that they've only just reunited and shouldn't start arguing. Rubing says her brother is right, so she stops arguing with her father. Then she introduces the protagonist as her boyfriend. After that, she tells Wu Cheng that he can address her father informally and use the proper title once they are married. But Ruby notices that her father's expression is very serious, and her brother is also not in a position to help her. Lai Marin becomes even more alarmed after arriving in the city and asks if his children were planning to lie to him about this relationship. Ruothe says he has already researched everything possible about the protagonist and confirms that it is all true. However, his father says he doesn't believe him and insists that the real Wu Cheng should be dead, meaning the one standing before him must have taken his place. After seeing the documents his father presents, Ruothe says that's impossible since he personally verified everything. Then, Lee Marin states that only one possibility remains, just like before. This is another fake relationship, and everything was planned by his daughter. So he intends to put an end to this farce, and his change in demeanor is noticeable. He then starts interrogating the protagonist about his past. Chang says that he has already graduated, and now wants to help his girlfriend climb the market rankings. Lee Marin notices that the protagonist is confident, but he finds his answers too well prepared. So he wants to ask differently. Rubing realizes that this is the first time her father has asked such specific questions. If the protagonist answers incorrectly, everything will be lost. Until, in the middle of the conversation, the protagonist mentions that he likes firearms. This surprises both her father and Rubing. Even she is shocked since, according to his records, it would have been impossible for Chang to have had access to firearms, and her father will soon realize this as well. Chang says that people his age usually like guns, so he learned the basic principles, but he never managed to own one. Even so, he has always been interested in the subject. Rubing sighs in relief that he managed to get out of that situation, but she thinks that if this continues, the protagonist will soon slip up. Then Mr. Lee asks if his son has a firearm with him. Ruote says he does, so his father tells him to lend it to Chang. He obeys his father and hands the gun to the protagonist. Then Mr. Lee asks him to describe the weapon. Chang provides all the details with precision, proving that he wasn't joking when he said he understood the subject. Rubing knows that her father was in the military and assumes that the protagonist is trying to establish a connection with him through a common interest. Meanwhile, the protagonist states that, based on the weight, this pistol should have 6 rounds. Then he removes the magazine, and as he said, there were indeed 6 bullets inside. Rubing thinks that if someone can determine the number of rounds just by weight, it means their familiarity with firearms is not just from magazines or the internet. This means Chang is indirectly admitting that he lied about never handling a firearm. Her father believes the protagonist is trying to prove that he is not just an ordinary person through his skills, and through that, proving that he is worthy of dating his daughter and protecting her. But there is a bigger problem. Her father questions why Rubing is dating someone so unknown and wonders what the real purpose behind it is. Then he says that Chang is indeed very skilled. The protagonist feigns modesty, saying he is not that impressive, and that he doesn't know how Lee Rubing ended up dating him. And then he asks to speak with her father alone, something Rubing doesn't think is a good idea. She doesn't want to be left out of this conversation, but her father wants to hear what her boyfriend has to say. Chang tells Rubing not to overreact, as getting angry will only worsen the situation, and claims that he just wants an honest conversation with her father. With that, he manages to convince her to step out, and he calls his brother as well. But outside the room, she asks if there are cameras inside, and Rutai confirms that there are. Alone, Mr. Lee tells the protagonist that he has a strong influence over his daughter, but Chang replies that Rubing is simply understanding. Before they continue, the protagonist picks up a bottle of liquor and smashes it on the floor, revealing that inside there was a hidden camera. At the same time, in the security room, the brothers don't understand why they suddenly can't see anything. The protagonist thoroughly scans the entire room, finding every hidden camera and listening device, ensuring complete privacy. However, when he finishes, Mr. Lee points a gun at his head and asks who he really is and what he wants with his daughter. In the surveillance room, the brothers try to fix the cameras, but nothing works, and they are left blind. Back to the protagonist, he tells Mr. Lee that he is definitely the father of the 2 brothers, given that both of them pointed a gun at him. However, he confidently states that the gun is not loaded. Lee Marin places the gun on the table and says that, despite being young, Chang is brave. Then he confirms that the protagonist was right and asks what his true intentions are. Chang says that he genuinely loves his daughter and wants to marry her, as well as build a family together. Lee Marin realizes that the protagonist has no fear of offending him and isn't worried about any kind of retaliation, so he tells Chang to get straight to the point. The protagonist says that Mr. Lee cares more about the family's interests above all else, which is why he didn't oppose his daughter's marriage to Ding Rulan, even knowing who he really is. He asks if he isn't afraid that one day Rubing will become so angry that she will seek revenge. Lee Marin doesn't like being lectured and becomes deeply irritated with the protagonist. Outside, Rubing squirms with curiosity about how the conversation is going, and moves to the next room, hoping to overhear something. However, her plan doesn't work, and Rute tells her that he used the best soundproofing materials when constructing this place. Back in the conversation, Chang says that Ding Rulan is completely paranoid and has no self-control, meaning he won't live much longer, nor will his family. He asks if Mr. Lee remembers Don Yuan. Lee says that he was a young man from another family who drowned 10 years ago, but the protagonist says that it wasn't an accident, it was murder. Lee Marin refuses to believe it. He claims that the Don family was only slightly below the Ding family in status, making it impossible that they wouldn't have noticed something like that. However, the protagonist insists that it wasn't the Ding family that did it, but rather Ding Rulon himself. The reason was a woman named Qi Shiken. Many wealthy and powerful people tried to pursue her but were rejected. However, Don Yuan was an exception because they studied together. Ding Rulon invited Qi Shiken out and killed Don Yuan right in front of her, forcing her to stay by his side out of fear. Cheng says that he has contacted this woman and that she still harbors deep hatred for Ding Rulon, perhaps enough to testify against him. Lai Marin doesn't like hearing this. He fears a conflict between the families, and if that happens, he won't be able to stay competitive. Cheng knows this. He says that among all the families, the Sun family is Lai's strongest ally, and since his daughter isn't married, the partnership with the Ding family can still be changed. This makes Lai Marin think that the protagonist was sent by another family to destroy the alliance he'd planned. On the other side, Rubing is considering drilling a hole in the wall to hear something. However, her brother warns that they will hear the sound of the drill, so she tells him to think of another solution quickly. But Ruotai can't come up with anything. Back to the protagonist, he says that he only wants what's best for Rubing and her family, even suggesting someone from the Dong family as a business partner for Ruotai. Lai Marin says that a marriage alliance would already be difficult, and the two families don't even trust each other, so such a partnership wouldn't work. However, the protagonist says that he can resolve this issue, and that within a week, he will present results. At that moment, Lai Marin realizes that Cheng isn't joking, but he also thinks that this isn't the best time to align with the Ding family. So he asks Cheng what his real objective is. Cheng responds that he wants to see Ding Rulon dead because he cares deeply for Rubing and will do anything to protect her from any danger, even if it means killing if necessary. Then Lai Marin asks if he has any damaging information about the Wei family. Cheng responds that he does and says that if Lai Marin doesn't interfere in his relationship with Rubing for 6 months, he will reveal what he knows. With that, they reach an agreement. On the other side, Rubing is still trying everything to eavesdrop on the conversation, and even considers drilling a hole in the wall again. Her brother tells her to give up because they are already leaving the room. She quickly rushes to meet them. Then she asks if they have finished talking. Cheng responds that they have, and asks if Lai Marin needs anything else. He replies that he doesn't, and that he is already leaving. Soon he heads to his helicopter, and flies away. Lai Rubing tries to charm him and asks what they talked about and why her father left so easily. The protagonist responds that she won't get any information acting like that. Ruotai, feeling awkward, says his goodbyes and leaves. With that, Lai Rubing deduces what happened since Cheng refuses to say anything. Then the protagonist asks if she's going to give up so easily and claims that he's feeling a bit unwell and needs some care. But Lai Rubing pushes him away, calling him shameless. However, the protagonist grabs her and says that she was acting the same way just a moment ago. Lai Rubing tries to play hard to get, but the protagonist knows her too well. Cheng asks if she is jealous and says that he only gave her father some information that could bring down Ding Rulon, along with discussing the Wei family. After bringing Lai Rubing up to speed on the details, she thinks that if the Dong family's bond goes off, even more people will want to kill Ding Rulon. Feeling satisfied, she asks if the protagonist wants a reward. Cheng asks if she plans to do it right there since there might be people watching. Lai Rubing says he can refuse, but she knows that Cheng is truly in love with her. However, the protagonist says the same about her, which only benefits him. Despite her pride, Lai Rubing admits she is in love with him, saying that the protagonist meets all her standards, especially with his displays of power. But she insists that even though she is in love, she will not become a docile little kitten, and she claims that it is the protagonist himself who should be the one to act docile around her. Cheng, however, wishes her luck with that, and says that if she wants to reward him, she can give him a back massage. Lai Rubing says she will if he begs, but Cheng refuses and says he will ask someone else. Immediately, Su Qingying is the first person who comes to her mind. However, the protagonist says that Su is busy with work and that he will ask someone else. Rubing asks who it is. He simply says that it's someone who isn't his officially yet, but making her massage his shoulders will be easy. To make Rubing even more jealous, Cheng says that this girl is prettier and richer than her, and that he won't reveal her name so easily. But hearing her voice will help Rubing figure it out, so he makes a call. After the call is answered, the protagonist addresses the woman as Miss San, saying he is from Donghai University, and that he heard she is producing a song. The woman asks if he also makes music. Cheng says yes, and claims that she will like his material. She says that everyone tells her that, but they never have anything good to offer. So the protagonist asks if she can at least listen to his music before rejecting it. With that, he convinces her, and they set up a meeting for the same day. Lai Rubing realizes that it is a beautiful and wealthy woman who is still in university, with the last name San, but there is no one by that name among the top 10 richest in the city, until she thinks of someone and is shocked at the possibility. Then the protagonist confirms that it is the daughter of Wu Yuran. Lai Rubing asks if he isn't afraid that her mother will find out, because if he goes after this woman for a shoulder massage, it will definitely cause trouble. She also says that Wu Yuran is a personal example. She is the wealthiest person in the city and the eldest daughter of the owner of Senlin Clothing Company. After her divorce, she fought and completely destroyed her ex-husband to gain custody of her daughter, and even eliminated him with her power, granting the nickname Black Widow. Chang knows this, and he also knows that she was once the most beautiful woman in the city in her youth. Lai Rubing tries to convince him not to do this, saying that he is being reckless. She says that if Chang just wants a massage, he can stop by her house later, but she asks him not to go after Wu Yuran's daughter. However, the protagonist states that the massage is just an excuse. Lai Rubing asks what he really intends to do, but Chang tells her not to think about it, and that he won't do anything dangerous. Then he says goodbye and heads to the meeting. After arriving at the arranged location, the protagonist meets Song Zuan. They greet each other, and she asks if Chang would like something to drink. He says no and that he just wants to show her his music. Then he asks if she has paper and a pen. Song asks why, and he responds that it's to write the lyrics, because he claims to have everything memorized. She wasn't expecting that, as she assumed he had already written it down. Regardless, she prepares to write. In 10 minutes, the protagonist composes an entire song, writing the sheet music and even listing the instruments that will be used. Now that she has everything, Song Zuan feels more at ease and realizes that the protagonist is better than she expected. Chang asks if she wants to buy this composition, and without hesitation Song agrees. They discuss the price, but Song is unwilling to pay too much. The protagonist states that his final offer is 10,000 and that he cannot lower the price. He also claims to have other songs, but they are the same price. Because of this, Song Chuan refuses the deal, so Chang says they have nothing more to discuss. He also says that even though they just met, he doesn't believe Song will plagiarize his music and sees no need to take her notebook. Then he says his goodbyes and leaves. Song Zuan watches him go and just finds him a strange guy. After leaving, the protagonist heads to a studio. He tells the receptionist that he wants to record a song and rent the studio for 3 hours. Chang thinks that in his previous reincarnations, the song Antidote for the Soul became extremely popular and went viral on the day of its release, so he will wait for Song Zuan to change her mind. Inside, the receptionist asks if he needs any professional assistance. Chang thanks her but says he can handle everything on his own. After 3 hours, he finishes the recording and now only needs to upload the song online. When he picks up his phone, Su Qingying says she hasn't been able to reach him all this time and was worried. Chang asks what happened. She replies that Mu Qian is starting her internship at Golden Blessing Group and will no longer need to leave the country to study. He thanks Su for the help, and she tells him she won't be able to meet him today. However, the protagonist says he is also busy and agrees to see her another day. On his way home, the protagonist notices another car following him. He realizes the car has no license plate and must have been sent by Ding Rulan. Even so, Chang only thinks about uploading the song today and doesn't want to waste time. So he accelerates, leaving the pursuing car behind. Once home, he decides that his stage name will be Chenmu, simply his name reversed. That way, Song will know the song is his. After posting it, all he has to do is wait for the views to roll in. The next morning, Chang wakes up and wants to check the results of his song. However, he notices something strange. The flower base has been moved, and the cushion is positioned differently than before. He realizes that he hadn't paid much attention yesterday, but someone must have entered his house and planted cameras and listening devices. However, instead of removing them, he decides to use them to his advantage. Chang calls Lai Rubing and says he needs to talk about Song Zuan, arranging a meeting at her company. Before leaving, the protagonist considers the possibility of an accident happening today, but everything is under control, so he starts his car, and once again encounters a suspicious vehicle. As he suspected, he is still being followed, and trapped between two trucks, he gets boxed in. Chang thinks that this method of accidental death is quite common and usually has a 100% fatality rate. He memorizes the license plates of the vehicles and immediately decides to reset the day. Then he returns to his bed. After that, he calls Ru Tai and informs him about Ding Rulan's henchmen, detailing the ambush they had set up, that he says he wants the henchmen captured alive. If they remain hidden, they'll be difficult to track down, but on the road, it's a different story. Chang then decides to leave through the shopping mall's parking lot. Shortly after, Ru Tai calls, saying he has sent some men to locate the vehicles on the road. Chang replies that he is nearby and instructs his brother-in-law to act as planned. Now the protagonist just needs to wait for the henchmen to arrive. On the road, one of the truck drivers notices that the protagonist has entered the garage and realizes that the plan won't work anymore. However, before they can react, a van crashes into the truck. The driver assumes it's just someone who doesn't know how to drive. Little does he know what's coming next. Later, the entire gang of henchmen is captured. Jiang Chunwen, their leader, receives this information and orders them to proceed with Plan B. He wants the protagonist dead by the end of the day. Ding Rulan's informant increases the bounty on the protagonist's head and instructs them to leave no traces behind. Chang calls his brother-in-law and tells Rote to find a crowded place and wait for him there. After hanging up, Chang enters his girlfriend's company and notices that the security camera is damaged. Immediately realizing that the henchmen have been there as well, he then heads to her office and finds several henchmen waiting for him. Before the protagonist can step out of the elevator, they rush at him wielding knives, but the protagonist is a close combat expert. With ease, he disarms the men and knocks them unconscious, taking down one henchman after another. The more of them that show up, the more the room fills with men. Even so, the protagonist doesn't back down. On the contrary, he defeats them all. Meanwhile, Lai Rubing runs through the company searching for the protagonist, until she discovers that he is in the elevator and rushes to meet him. As soon as her security team opens the elevator doors, they are met with the sight of bodies sprawled on the floor. Lai Rubing is overwhelmed with worry, but she is stunned to see the protagonist still standing. Lai Rubing finally finds the protagonist, and she sees that he is all battered. Immediately, she becomes worried and runs to him. Chang tells her not to hook in, or she'll get dirty too. Lai Rubing says that if he can still talk, then his injuries must not be too serious. Even so, she wants to take him to the hospital. Chang says it's not necessary, but she insists, pointing out that he is covered in blood and asking if he is in pain. The protagonist says he isn't hurt and laughs, claiming that Lai Rubing is just using this as an excuse to touch him. She asks if he really fought all those men and didn't get injured. Chang says yes, that he just got a little dirty, but before taking a bath, he needs to do something, so he picks up one of the thugs' phones and takes a picture of them lying on the ground. After that, he calls their leader and asks if he has seen the picture he just sent. The leader asks what the protagonist is doing. Chang simply tells him to send this photo to Ding Rulan and let him know his days are numbered. After that, Chang tells one of the company's security guards to call an ambulance for the owner of that phone. Then he tells Lai Rubing that in 2 days, you will have to leave the city and head south. She asks if the protagonist is planning to kill Ding Rulan. Lai Rubing kisses him and tells Chang not to do it because she fears for his safety. Chang simply says that kissing her like this isn't satisfying and suggests they go home to do something better. Somewhere far away, San has just listened to the #1 song on the internet. While the comments are positive, and even professional singers are praising it. But what's most shocking is that she recognizes it as Wu Cheng's song. Her friend asks why she copied the sheet music. San completely ignores her because she wants to talk to the protagonist immediately. At Lai Rubing's house, she sees Cheng's phone ringing and assumes it's Ding Rulan, so she answers, ready to threaten. However, San says she just wants to talk to Wu Cheng about something important. Lai Rubing says she will pass along the message. Then San realizes this must be his woman, apologizes, and says she only wants to discuss the song and nothing else. Since Lai Rubing doesn't know anything about it, she is confused. Then San Zuan asks if she is really his wife and how she doesn't know about the song. The fact that the girl is doubting her annoys her, so she knocks on the bathroom door, telling Cheng that he has a call to answer. The protagonist picks up and says he can talk to San later, but right now, he is busy. Then he explains to Lai Rubing about the song, saying that San just wants to buy it. Lai Rubing says he truly is a talented man, and teasing him, asks what else he knows how to do. Cheng tells her she is playing with fire, until suddenly, her phone starts ringing. Lai Rubing says it's Ding Rulan. He says that what happened today wasn't his fault and that Zhang Chuan acted on his own. Lai Rubing says she already expected that since the men you sent were weakling, then she decides to tease Ding Rulan a little. And as her boyfriend touches her, she says some provocative words near the phone. This drives Ding Rulan into a furious rage. The protagonist joins in on the game and decides to provoke him as well, until Ding Rulan throws his phone to the ground and stomps on it out of pure hatred. Lai Rubing notices that Ding has hung up and asks if he might just drop dead from anger. Cheng says that would still be too little for what he deserves. However, Lai Rubing says she doesn't want to talk about this anymore and wants to go back to their previous conversation. She comments on her teasing and Cheng says he was just acting. He also says he needs to meet with Wu Yuran and will need his girlfriend's help. Lai Rubing thought he was after the daughter, not the mother. The protagonist says he will still meet with San, but her mother will also come looking for him, which is why he needs help. While they are talking, out of nowhere, Ru Tai enters. He immediately apologizes for what happened and feels guilty that his brother-in-law was ambushed by the thug. He offers to help with anything needed. Lai Rubing says she knows exactly what her brother is planning, so she warns him not to do anything stupid. Ru Tai says this wasn't the first ambush, and next time it could be the last. That's why he wants to do something to prevent it. Then, Lei Rubing says that the protagonist should persuade him not to do it, so Cheng asks if Ruote left the guy from earlier alive. He replies that he does, and then the protagonist says he will talk to him alone. Ruote asks if Cheng has doubts about whether this man is connected to Ding Rulan. He responds that he does, and when he talks to Hen, he wants Ruote nearby, but he makes and promise his sister that he won't do anything reckless. Ruote says that if it's to kill Ding Rulan, he will follow whatever his brother-in-law commands. Now that this is settled, Cheng says he will talk to them later, as he has something to take care of now. At the meeting place with Song Xuan, he approaches the young woman. Song is already waiting for him. Can the two sit down to talk? Song asks if Cheng's family runs a small restaurant. He says yes. Then Song comments that, judging by the voice, his girlfriend sounded around 40 years old, and asks if she is paying him to be her boyfriend. She assumes that's why Cheng charged such a high price for the songs, because he is trying to get rid of her, but he just laughs at all of this. Then Song says that with his level of talent, he shouldn't let anyone take advantage of him, and she will help him become independent. Song tells him that he is already popular with just one song, and that major companies will try to sign him, potentially making him a star. Cheng says he doesn't want to enter the music industry and asserts that Song is wrong about many things, but he wants to talk business with her since that's why they are there. She agrees and wants to buy his song. The protagonist asks for 100,000, and she accepts without hesitation. Additionally, Cheng wants 50% of the profits. Song agrees as long as he can maintain the quality standard. For the protagonist, that's not a problem. He even promises to return the money if he doesn't deliver as agreed. 10 minutes later, he has already given her another song. After receiving the payment, Cheng says he has other things to do and is leaving. He feels extremely satisfied with closing this deal, and inside his car, he notices that he is being followed again, so he accelerates, leaving the pursuer behind. The man following him reports to his boss that he lost sight of the target. That boss is none other than Song's mother. The man says that, apparently, the target knew he was being followed and is now in front of her organization's building. Wu Yuran finds this interesting and orders that he be brought to the 16th floor. As soon as the protagonist arrives, Madame Wu receives him, along with a bodyguard, a former Special Forces member. The protagonist asks Wu Yuran if it isn't a bit rude to welcome him like this. She says that although she doesn't know his intentions, she asserts that he is the one being impolite. Either way, she dismisses the security guard, who, before leaving, warns the protagonist not to do anything reckless. After that, Wu Yuran gets straight to the point and asks him what his intentions are with her daughter. The protagonist simply asks if she really cares that much about a daughter that another woman gave birth to. He says he knows that Wu Yuran was forced by her family to marry young and only agreed under the condition that after becoming a mother, her family would no longer control her. After the wedding, she kept a knife under her pillow and made her husband sleep in separate rooms, using the knife every time he tried to reproach her. During the day, she claimed that she did it because she didn't want to ruin her appearance or show weakness, so her husband had no reason to be angry. She created a situation where she could accept her husband as long as he gave her time, so that someone else could help her have a child. However, the unexpected outcome was that after Song was born, she simply didn't get what she wanted and started a war with her husband. The rest is history. Wu Yuran finds it odd that the protagonist knows all of this but claims she doesn't care if he talks about it to others. Now she wants to talk about her daughter and mourns that even though she is not her biological mother, she will do everything to prevent any harm from coming to her. The protagonist says that he is not focused on her daughter, but rather on her, as he has some ideas in mind. Wu Yuran comments that young people today are bold and asks what kind of ideas he has in mind. Cheng, even though he is being audacious, says that she is very cautious, especially with men, and claims that he had no choice but to approach her through her daughter. With this, Wu Yuran asks the protagonist if his girlfriend knows what he is doing. He states that she does, and that he keeps her informed about everything. Since that's the case, now that they are face to face, Wu Yuran wants to discuss these complicated ideas he has about her. The protagonist gets straight to the point, and says that Ding Rulan wants to kill him. Wu Yuran asks what that has to do with her. Cheng says that he will kill Ding Rulan first, and wants to warn her to withdraw her money from the Chuanheng funds as soon as possible. She still doesn't understand the connection between these matters, so Cheng explains that all of Senlin Group's businesses are tied to them, and the protagonist claims responsibility for this. Wu Yuran asks if he is trying to go against her. Cheng replies that he only wants to take on Ding Rulan, but she might get caught up in the process. She insists that she has nothing to do with it, and doesn't intend to interfere in anything. However, the protagonist claims to know that isn't true. He says that Q Won-kyu, the primary shareholder of Chuanheng Funds, is also the second largest shareholder in Beiwang Funds, and the current owner of those funds is Dane Weifeng. Wu states that people see the third master of the Ding family as the central figure of his second generation, and that he is also the third son of the family patriarch. Chang says that this person is Deng Rulong's uncle. Still, Wu Yurong insists that she has no involvement with these funds, so Chang tells her that she might not be aware of how deep Hu Wonkyu's ties to the Ding family go, and that when something happens to the Ding family, this will affect her, and it will be through Hu Wonkyu. Wu Yuran wonders if Lai Rubing's boyfriend, who has managed to reach even her family's level, could truly be capable of defeating the Ding family. The protagonist says that his girlfriend admires Madame Wu and holds her in high regard. That is why he is getting her this warning. However, Wu Yuran finds the reasoning too simple and full of absurdities, so she thinks she will use Chang to find out what his girlfriend is planning. Then she calls Lai Rubing and says that her boyfriend is right in front of her, and asks if Rubing knows what he plans to do against the Ding family. Lei replies that she does. Then Wu asks if her family is involved. Rubing says that this matter was discussed between her boyfriend and her father, and she didn't interfere. This makes Wu wonder what kind of influence the protagonist has over the Li family. Regardless, she ends the call and offers the protagonist a drink. He then accepts some wine. Wu Yuran quickly grabs one of her bottles and pours 2 glasses of wine, so they can drink together, because she intends to extract more information from him. For half an hour, Cheng explains in detail what is at stake between Ding Rulong and Tan Yuantao. After that, Wu Yuran offers more wine, and says she will choose a special one this time. However, she loses her balance in her high heels and was about to fall to the ground with the bottle in her hand, but the protagonist quickly catches her and the bottle. Wu Yuran apologizes for her clumsiness. However, Cheng reassures her. She says that she drank more than she should have, her face flushed near the protagonist. Cheng knows that even though she doesn't trust men, she still has desires, much like Lai Rubing, but she wants a powerful man by her side. To win her over, there is one very important prerequisite: physical contact, and now that the condition has been met, the rhythm is in the protagonist's favor. He then says that since she is drunk, they can continue the conversation another day. But Wu Yuran insists that he stay, saying she is happy to have met him, and claims that they are not finished talking. Wu Yuran complains that her heels are bothering her, so she decides to take them off and go barefoot. However, with his sharp instincts, Cheng picks her up in his arms, saying that the floor isn't clean and is too cold for bare feet. Wu Yuran realizes that he picked her up on purpose, and she has never met a man as bold as him in her 40 years. After placing her somewhere more comfortable, Cheng says that if she wants, they can continue their conversation. But Wu Yuran asks if what he just did was intentional. The protagonist answers yes. Immediately, Wu Yuran gets irritated and wants to kill Hen. Cheng sees that she didn't like it, but he asks why she pretended to be drunk, as he knows she took off her shoes and couldn't stand up because she was acting. Then Wu Yuran realizes that he is more perceptive than he appears. Cheng says that she gave him a very bold opportunity, but thinks the method she uses on men don't need to be used on him. He also says that he knows her better than she thinks, so he wants to have a normal conversation without being treated as an enemy. Wu Yuran asks if he doesn't think he's a little too confident and how he knows so much about her. The protagonist says that her husband did not die alone, and he knows that she had several men follow him and humiliate him in every possible way until he couldn't take it anymore. However, he claims that she has more secrets kept away. Sun Yi states that Wu Yuran is still a virgin at the age of 42. He also knows that on lonely nights, she uses toys hidden in the depths of her drawer. Cheng says that she must still have a lot of energy despite her age because she is driven by her own hormones, so it's nothing to be ashamed of. He asks if Wu Yuran has ever considered the possibility of starting her life over. He even mentions a song that perfectly describes her life. Wu Yuran remembers that 12 years ago, on the night of her birthday, while she was drunk, she improvised that song on the piano, and she wonders how Cheng knows about it. Then she asks who the protagonist really is. She thinks that these things are so secret that not even someone with divine support could know them, but somehow Cheng does, which is completely absurd. Next, the protagonist reveals that he knows much more than just that. He details every secret Wu Yuran has but claims that he does not wish to be her enemy. This terrifies her because she realizes that, with so much information, Cheng could send her to prison. So she believes she has only 2 options: kill him or make him disappear. However, she also considers developing a close relationship with him to use his abilities. But since the protagonist is extremely smart, making him disappear would be very difficult. So there is only one option left. Wu Yuran looks him up and down and concludes that Cheng actually has quite a good appearance. Then she says that if they are not enemies, they can discuss what really matters, and she asks if he truly wants to eliminate the Ding family. stating that it will not be easy to do so. Chang says that he hopes to have her by his side in the game, and that it will not only affect her but also elevate her career. Wu Yuran says that he held her in his arms and asks if Miss Lai doesn't feel jealous. He replies that she doesn't because Rubing is not an ordinary woman. For Madame Wu, this is not surprising, as she recognizes Miss Li's reputation. She then thinks that taking the next step would not make her seem like an intruder in their relationship, and if Lai Rubing doesn't care, she won't either. After that, Wu Yuran makes up her mind and invites into her house for tea and to cure their hangover. The protagonist says that if she wants, he is willing to go. Upon arriving at her house, she asks how much time he has available today. Cheng replies that he has plenty of time. Wu Yuran wastes no time and kisses him as soon as they enter the apartment. Cheng says that this kind of thing should be done by a real man, and asks if she doesn't mind doing it right at the door. She responds with another kiss, but the protagonist tells her to take it easy, since he already mentioned that he has plenty of time. Then he picks her up once again and carries her to the bed, saying that they will take all the time they need. Wu Yuran grabs him by the neck and says that Cheng will have to work hard to satisfy her. After spending the night there, early in the morning, Madame Wu's daughter arrives home, and upon seeing an extra pair of shoes, she immediately worries about her mother. Wu Yuran wakes up and notices Son's arrival, so she tells Cheng to hide. Then her daughter opens the bedroom door and finds her mother lying in bed. Son says she thought a thief had broken into their phone, but as soon as she realizes her mother is safe, she leaves the room. Wu Yuran breathes a sigh of relief for not being caught in the act. Soon after, the protagonist appears and tells her to answer the phone. It was none other than Lai Rubing calling, and even though she doesn't understand why, Wu Yuran answers the call. Wu Yuran says that the protagonist's phone was beside her, so she picked it up. Rubing asks if Cheng came looking for her this early. She simply replies no. Then Miss Li asks if it was the other way around. She responds no again. Then Li asks where Cheng is. Wu Yuran answers that he is at her house. Rubing asks if she let him stay the night at her house. Wu Yuran says yes, and even adds that they slept together. The fact that Cheng won her over in just one day demonstrates his power. This leaves Lai Rubing impressed but also furious. Then she tells Wu Yuran that they need to have a personal conversation. As soon as she hangs up, Wu Yuran says that she will meet with Miss Li, and she gets ready to go out. Then she sees her daughter leaving and asks where she is going since she just arrived. Son says she doesn't want to disturb her mother, but she asks who she is with. Wu Yuran hesitates, but her daughter says that even though it is awkward, it is better to meet her companion now than to leave it for later. However, she says that if her mother is uncomfortable with it, they can wait for another occasion. 40 minutes later, Lai Rubing arrives at Wu's house and comes face to face with the protagonist. She says that Cheng is truly surprising. He thanks her and asks if she is jealous. Rubing says she knows his charms. However, she asks him not to make her angry, at least for a day. Then the protagonist surprises her again and says that he loves her. She wonders why Cheng said that out of nowhere. She almost loses control and thinks she will have to stay calm. Then she asks who else he has said that to. Cheng insists that he has only said it to her. Because of this, Lai Rubing says that she loves him too. He then hugs her, but Li asks if Su Qingying won't cause problems if she finds out. Cheng assures her that she won't, and that it won't be a problem. Then he says he will go phone and lead the two to talk alone. Shortly after, Wu Yuran appears. She asks if she made Miss Li wait too long. However, Rubing gets straight to the point and says that both of them are busy, so she doesn't want any unnecessary arguments. After that, she demands that Wu Yuran kneel and apologize. Wu Yuran doesn't understand and asks why she should apologize. Lai says that she slept with her boyfriend and didn't even bother to explain. Wu Yuran asks if that was really necessary. She also says they were just enjoying the moment, and that she doesn't intend to be an obstacle in their relationship. Lai says that Wu Yuran is not the first woman to sleep with her boyfriend and won't be the last. Then Wu Yuran says she didn't know Su Qingying put so much pressure on Lai, and asks why she is so insecure. She also says that Lai doesn't even live in the same house as the protagonist, but Lai says that's because of her boyfriend's unpredictability. Lai says that Cheng made Su his wife, but in reality, she is just a mistress, and now he has made Wu Yuran his mistress too. Madame Wu doesn't like hearing that, but she knows that Cheng's goal is to bring down the Ding family, which means he truly wants to win Lai Rubing's heart. His patience with Rubing is not the same as it was with Su or with her, showing that he has a favorite. Then, Lai Rubing says she will give Wu another chance, but Wu Yuran asks why she is so aggressive. Lai Rubing doesn't want to talk anymore and demands an apology again. Wu Yuran just gives a sarcastic smile and pulls Miss Li close, giving her a kiss on the forehead. This catches Lai Rubing by surprise, and she asks why Wu did that. Wu Yuran understands how Miss Li feels and says she is apologizing to her. Rubing is not satisfied with this. In response, Wu Yuran says it's a shame she wasn't there the night before, claiming that it would have been much more fun with all three of them together. Such a comment makes Li Rubing extremely embarrassed. Wu Yuran decides to provoke her and asks if Miss Li felt sincerity in her apology. Rubing tells her to have more respect. In her thoughts, she thinks that Wu Yuran must have some kind of problem to say such things and concludes that it's best not to associate with people like that. Soon, Li says that they have nothing more to discuss and leaves. Wu Yuran thinks that nothing can be done about her and Cheng because she believes that the two will either become friends or stay apart without bothering each other. She feels sorry, but she is willing to use any method to get closer to Cheng. After all, she has fallen in love with him. Then Rubing calls her boyfriend and tells him to look for more normal women from now on. Cheng asks what happened between them. Rubing replies that Su Qingying is a bit strange, but Wu Yuran is beyond normal weird, and she won't talk about it anymore. Soon, Cheng concludes that Wu Yuran handled things well and didn't let Lei Rubing gain the upper hand. Then he concludes that the two will not provoke each other anymore, as Rubing is capable of acting regardless of the consequences, and Wu Yuran also wants a bit more of him. Still on the phone, Rubing says that something bad happened. Old Dao has escaped. Ru Tai went to the hospital and asked how that man dared to cause trouble in his territory. He becomes furious when he sees the man who tried to kill his brother-in-law, and he asks how many people Dane Rulan assigned to this plan, but the man refuses to answer. Soon, Ru Tai threatens to shoot him in the head. However, he is warned that the protagonist wants to interrogate this man and needs him alive. Ru Tai realizes that he really cannot kill him now, so he decides to step outside for a smoke and cool his head. But that was his mistake, because the thug took the opportunity to escape, and Ru Tai realizes that he fled through the window. Even though he was injured, he escaped through the pipes. After that, he calls the protagonist and explains what happened. Cheng realizes that the only person who could put pressure on Old Dao is Ru Tai himself, and the reason for the escape is quite clear. Ru Tai was afraid of his brother-in-law's reaction, which is why he took so long to call. But the protagonist says that he will look for the fugitive himself. Regretful, Ru Tai insists on helping with the search. Regardless, the protagonist prepares to go on the hunt. He remembers that there is only one place where the fugitive could go under these circumstances, and he says that he will certainly find him. Some time later, he arrives at Sinmen Street, Chuankao, exactly in the Xicheng district. The protagonist follows his memory and comes across one that houses Ding Rulan had prepared for his henchmen. This is the only one that has never been used, and he even knows where the key is. Cheng knows that Dao had a serious injury and was wearing hospital clothes when he escaped. On the way, he must have thought about changing clothes to avoid being caught by Ru Tai's team. Upon entering, Cheng sees that the house is full of furniture and a little worn, but he notices that the place is not dirty, meaning someone must be keeping it clean. Since the house appears to be inhabited, no one would suspect that there aren't actually people living there. And looking around, Cheng thinks that everything he needs is there, until he starts searching through some things and finds a cushioned armchair where a locked briefcase was stored. When he tries to open it, he realizes that it has a security mechanism, but in his 1,000 years of experience, he has learned how to open briefcases like this, and inside he finds something like documents, money, and cell phones, as well as other cases containing weapons and ammunition. Since these things are here, the fugitive will certainly show up. With that, he calls Ru Tai and asks him to request an ambulance from the hospital to be sent to his location. 2 minutes after hanging up, Old Dao appears at the house, thinking that he is finally safe. However, he quickly realizes that someone else is there. He swiftly grabs a knife. The protagonist appears and restrains him. Still weakened, Dao is unable to escape. He is surprised to see Cheng. Dao knows that he won't be able to fight him, since he is too injured for that, and even when he was in good shape, he couldn't defeat him. Cheng tells Dao to calm down because if he had wanted to kill him, he would have done so in the elevator earlier. Dao realizes that the protagonist doesn't want to fight and considers fleeing again. However, Cheng tells him to sit down so they can talk. Cheng states that Dao, at 21 years old, caused a death and deceived the police. After being exiled, he changed his name 4 times and now goes by Livian Dao. Upon hearing this, Dao thinks that nobody in the group he belongs to knows his real name, so he wonders how the protagonist has this information, and he considers the possibility that Cheng has found information about his parents and sister. Thus, he thinks that he must put an end to Cheng for the sake of his family. The protagonist knows his intentions and claims that perhaps protecting his family is the right thing to do. So for that reason, he wants to give Old Dao a chance and moves a gun closer to him. Dao thinks that he only has one chance to grab that pistol. Cheng tells him that the gun is loaded, so Dao grabs it at the first opportunity. However, the protagonist says that the gun could also be unloaded. Then he suggests a gamble to Dao. That way Dao is left with very few options. Dao thinks that the protagonist is bluffing and trying to trick him, and he realizes that the distance between them is very short, so using the gun is quite risky. Because of that, he thinks it would be better to opt for a knife he has hidden. Then he asks the protagonist if he is sure he will survive. Cheng says that, as expected from Dao, he always takes the safest approach, and he assures him that all the information he obtained was not shared with anyone else. Dao claims that trying to distract him is useless, but Cheng insists that he only wants to talk. This confuses Dao. He claims that he didn't reveal anything to Ruo Tai, and that he certainly won't give in to Cheng. However, the protagonist says that he doesn't need him to say anything because he already knows everything, concluding that the order to kill them came from Hua. Additionally, he states that Ding Rulan killed Ang Tan. Ang Tan was one of the central figures of the Jinhua group, the nephew of the leader, and the most powerful contender for the group's succession. He mysteriously died 5 years ago. The leader ordered Dao to find the killer, but he never did. This remains one of his greatest regrets. Finding the killer is one of the goals he wants to achieve before he dies, and the protagonist knows this. However, Dao says that without proof, he can't do anything. He believes that the protagonist is just trying to manipulate and to go against the Ding family. Because of that, he picks up his gun again, and says there's nothing more to talk about, but upon seeing that the protagonist showed no fear, Dao asks why he is smiling, stating that he must be enjoying his last moments alive. Then, before shooting, he takes something to muffle the sound, and fires the shot. However, the bullet doesn't hit the protagonist. Dao only fired to scare him, but he realizes that it didn't work. He sees that Cheng didn't show the slightest bit of fear, nor did he hesitate, making it the first time he has ever encountered someone like this in his entire career. Because of this, he agrees to listen to what the protagonist has to say. Cheng says that he will provide the proof he needs. Dao asks if he really has proof. Cheng says he does, and tells him that if he wants to know the truth, he must tell a lie because whenever he lies to someone, they will tell the truth. This leaves Dao a little confused, but the protagonist knows exactly what he is doing. He tells Dao to call Zhang Chuan and say that he escaped, that he tried to kidnap Li Rubing but failed, though he ended up hurting her. So Dao made the call and repeated what they had planned. Zhang Chuan gets angry and says that he warned him not to hurt the girl. Dao expresses regret for it, but he claims he did just as planned, just like when Ang Tan was killed, saying that he never told anyone about it to preserve their friendship. Upon hearing this, Zhang Chuan asks how Dao knew about that. Without realizing it, Zhang Chuan says exactly what Dao needed to hear. Then he hands the phone over to the protagonist. Cheng asks if Ding Rulan is in Nangwon, and if he returned to his hometown to meet with the patriarch. Zhang Chuan heard that Ding had urgent business to handle in his hometown and concludes that it must be because Lai Rubing was hurt. Soon he realizes that this violates the family tree and knows that he will be held accountable for it, and when Ding returns he will be a dead man. Cheng hangs up the phone because he already got what he wanted. He has now planted confusion in Zhang Chuan's mind, and he asserts that Zhang Chuan will not report the Ding family because he is too afraid. No matter how loyal he is, it is now useless. After all, Zhang Chuan has a wife and children and doesn't want to die, plus he has a lot of money stored abroad. He will try to escape the country, so Cheng tells Dao to send his people after him and capture him while he is vulnerable. Dao says that these people killed Ang Tan, but he no longer wants to work for Ding Rulan. However, he agrees to help capture Zhang Chuan for Cheng, until he hears people approaching outside the house, and wonders if Cheng still plans to do something to him. Cheng clarifies everything to Dao, and tells him to go ahead and instruct his men on how to act, because he doesn't want a big commotion in this house that would draw attention. With that, Dao gives an address and orders his subordinates. He also tells them not to ask questions and just follow the plan. Cheng knows that Dao is only helping because he wants to know why Ding Rulan killed Ang Tan, so he decides to tell them. 5 years ago, Ang Tan brought foreigners to China to discuss business. He wanted to help Ding the smuggling, opening the Ding family's channels to further improve Jinhua Group's position, but Ding Rulan wasn't interested. Because of that, he refused the deal. Ang Tan, not understanding Rulan, felt humiliated and threatened him. As a result, Ang Tan disappeared that same night. Cheng says that Dao's regret must have faded by now, and he will give him another gift. So the protagonist makes a phone call and says that old Dao is with him and demands 100 million as ransom. Dao doesn't quite understand the purpose of this. On the other side, Dao's boss asks who is calling, and the protagonist asks if he hasn't recognized his voice. Dao's boss recognizes the protagonist and asks if his subordinate is still alive. He says yes, but mentions that Dao tried to kill him, and now he wants ransom money to release Hen. After thinking for a moment, the boss says he can only pay 5 million for Dao and asks the protagonist to meet him at the border to exchange the hostage for the money. Chang says that a leader will always be a leader, even if their decision-making process differs. He acknowledges that the boss handled Dao's situation well, but then he asks if he wants to know what happened to Wang Tun. After a while, Chang recounts the entire story again. After that, he asks if Dao's boss agrees with his subordinate helping Ding Rulong to kill Wan Rita. The boss is surprised by how much information the protagonist has, and Chang says he holds a grudge against Ding Rulong, so he will make sure the Wan family learns about Wan Rita's case. Dao realizes from his leader's tone that he wants to start a war. The boss feels threatened, but the protagonist says he is not trying to intimidate Hen. Then he asks if Cheng wants help attacking the Ding family. He replies no and says he is merely stating the reality of the situation. The Wan family will not let this slide, and the Li family will distance themselves from them. He also says that instead of the 100 million, he wants Dao to stay in the city and work for Hen. If he agrees, Cheng will handle Wang's death and ensure it doesn't fall back on the boss. The boss says that if the protagonist is telling the truth, he agrees with the plan. Then Cheng hands the phone to Dao, and Dao says he has been listening to the conversation. The two of them go over some details, and the protagonist just observes. Dao says that 6 of them fought against Cheng and lost. Now he wants a different kind of life because he is tired of the way he has been living. His boss agrees and hangs up the phone. The protagonist congratulates him on his freedom, and tells Dao to find Jian Chuan and bring Yin into the city discreetly. Shortly after, the ambulance arrives at the location, and Cheng tells Dao to take care of his injuries so they can finalize the details later. Now Cheng thinks he also needs to go home, so he does and falls asleep as soon as he arrives. However, during his sleep, there is some movement in his bed. Cheng wakes up and tries to see what is happening, until he finds Lai Rubing. The protagonist asks what she is doing there. She replies that she just wanted to give him a reward. Cheng says that if that's the case, he is ready to be rewarded. Lying together in bed, Rubing says it has been exactly 809 days since they met. Cheng says that even though it's not much time, he asks if she would believe him if he said he knows everything about her. Lee asks for examples of this knowledge. The protagonist says that today she has nothing to do, so she came to see him at his house. Rubing says that's not the only reason she came. The protagonist doesn't believe her. Then Rubing gives in and says she felt like helping Hen. Soon after, she kisses him to heal his sadness. She feels very happy hugging Cheng and wonders if this is what it feels like to be in love. Then she remembers that her brother will be coming by that night. Cheng says he is not angry at Ruo Tai, but Rubing says her brother made a mistake and wants to apologize properly. After that, she goes to answer the door, as she had asked the bodyguards to do some shopping, and then she asks if she can use the kitchen. Cheng asks what she is going to prepare. Rubing says she will let him test her cooking skills and mentions that when she studied abroad, she always cooked for herself, so she knows a little of everything. Cheng states that he already knew that, and Rubing says that even though she doesn't cook much due to her busy life, once you learn, it's hard to forget. She doesn't claim to be better than Miss Su, but she is certainly a better cook than a man like Ken. But then she takes a fish out of the bag and ends up dropping it. Because she hurt herself with the scales, the protagonist looks at her with an amused expression, and Rubing says it's nothing, trying to brush off the embarrassing moment. However, Cheng tells her to go change her clothes since she got dirty and says he will clean up the mess. In the shower, Rubing thinks that she wanted to cook for her boyfriend and her brother, because she hopes Ruo Tai won't blame himself too much for what happened, but now because of the fish, she messed up, and due to the lack of time, she considers calling a chef to prepare dinner. But then she hears something coming from the kitchen, and when she gets there, she realizes that Cheng has already prepared everything. She definitely did not expect this. She thought he didn't even know how to cook, so upon seeing her boyfriend cooking for her, she decides to take a picture of the moment. To tease him, she asks if Cheng has ever cooked for Miss Su. He replies that he hasn't, that he does only cook for his family, making her the first woman to taste his food. This completely melts her, so Rubing kisses and hugs him. Cheng tells her to take it easy with her excitement since he still has to finish the preparations. Sometime later, Ruo Tai arrives at the house. Upon seeing all the food on the table, Lai Rubing says that Cheng prepared everything. Ruo Tai is impressed and says he has never eaten anything so good. However, his sister thinks that if he is going to apologize, he should do it properly instead of just praising the food. Cheng notices that Rubing has a very serious expression and tells her to eat too. As soon as she tastes it, she realizes that the flavor is truly amazing, worthy of any renowned chef. She can hardly believe that this is really her boyfriend. Cheng says they can eat as much as they want since he prepared this meal for them to enjoy together. And so, Ruo Tai leaves after being satisfied with the food. After they are alone, Rubing says it's late and that they need to rest. The The protagonist hesitates and tries to argue. However, Lai Rubing stops him from speaking, stating that even if it's inconvenient, there are still ways to handle these situations. In the morning, Rubing brushes her teeth, and the protagonist comments that she is very attentive to oral health, and asks if she isn't afraid of damaging her teeth. Lai Rubing doesn't fall for his joke. Then Cheng says he made coffee and asks if she wants sun. Rubing replies that she doesn't because she has a meeting to attend. Cheng says he also has matters to take care of, and Rubing asks if he is going to see Wu Yuran. The protagonist says no. Soon she gives him a goodbye kiss and tells Cheng to be careful. After a while she arrives at her company and gets ready for the meeting. In the meantime she receives a call from Miss Su, asking where the protagonist is, as Su says he is not in the city and didn't say where he was going. Lai Rubing says she will ask him, but for now advises her to let it go. Then she calls the protagonist, asking about his whereabouts. He says he is taking care of something. However, Rubing hears a woman's voice she doesn't recognize and mentions that Miss Su is worried. Regardless, she tells Cheng to handle his business and says she won't bother him anymore. During the meeting, the man tells the protagonist that they haven't even spoken properly, yet he has already received 2 calls, but Cheng says to just ignore it. Mao Rusan tells the protagonist to get straight to the point, and his wife claims that he is being made a fool of. Then his guest receives another call. Not even a minute passes and it happens again. Rusan gets irritated and asks if the protagonist is playing games with him. He points a gun, telling the protagonist to either hang up or throw the phone away. But when you least expected it, Cheng grabbed his gun and pointed it at him. His wife is startled and he is in shock at what just happened. After that, his guards appear. Once again, Cheng's phone rings, and Rusan suggests that he answer it, hoping it will serve as a distraction. With the gun still pointed at them, Cheng picks up the call and speaks to Wu Yuran, saying he is busy at the moment. She says that Cheng didn't call her back, so she missed him and even dreamed about him last night. Then she asks if he wants to go out for lunch, or if he has a commitment with Miss Lai. Cheng says he is out of town and will be back in 2 days, telling her he will call her back at night. At that moment, one of the guards grabs a knife and tries to take advantage of the situation, but the protagonist quickly notices, and fires a shot in his direction, hitting the knife and knocking it out of his hand. Due to the precision of the shot, everyone present is in shock. Now that he has finished his phone call, Cheng wants to resume the conversation. Mao Rusan says he doesn't know who sent him, but offers 20 million for the protagonist not to kill them. His desperation is so great that he raises the offer to 50 million. However, upon realizing that the protagonist still doesn't seem satisfied, he decides to increase it further, and offers 100 million to let him live, claiming that he can double whatever the price is. Cheng simply says that he hates when people offend him and tells Mao Rusan that they should talk in private. Then Mao Rusan dismisses everyone else, and Cheng returns his gun, telling him not to accidentally hurt anyone. He also says that 3 years ago, Mao Rusan arranged for the beautiful Yan Qian to be sent to Ding Rulan, and through that, he gathered information and destroyed his investments, and recently, he prepared someone even younger and more beautiful. Mao Rusan realizes he has been exposed and fears that the protagonist might be an envoy of Ding Rulan, becoming desperate. Cheng says that Mao Rusan took 20 years to bring his bard to the top of the city, and that he earns a high income from it. Not to mention that he also has other businesses under his command that are very valuable. Mao Rusan thinks that the protagonist doesn't seem like a hitman sent by Ding Rulan, and the fact that he has investigated his life makes him nervous. But Cheng tells him not to be afraid and states that he knows Mao Rusan only betrayed Ding because he was forced to, as it was a request from the Yu family. Rusan wonders what the protagonist intends to do with this information. He is talking about the matter from his own perspective, so Mao Rusan doesn't understand his true intentions. The protagonist says that he handled the Ding Rulan situation well. Rusan asks if he holds any grudge against Ding Rulan. Cheng replies that he does. Then Mao Rusan says he could have said that earlier because he was scared, but now he feels more at ease since they are on the same side. Next, the protagonist says he heard that Mao Rusan has always looked after He Shiken. Just hearing her name, Mao Rusan remembers the first time he saw her and wished he could have the beautiful woman for himself, but the unique aura around her made him think she was too dangerous. So he investigated her thoroughly. After secretly observing her, he realized that her lonely eyes were real. Rusan almost couldn't resist helping her. However, he was aware of how dangerous that would be, so he held back, and he prevented other men from getting close to her because he didn't want anyone else to have what he deeply desired. On the other hand, he was also doing Ding Rulan a favor. Then Mao Rusan wonders why the protagonist mentioned this woman's name and what her connection to Ding Rulan is. He then considers the possibility that the protagonist has already gotten involved with He Shikin and holds a grudge because of that. Mao Rusan quickly asks what the protagonist wants. Cheng says he just wants to return to his city. So Mao Rusan asks if the magic city isn't enough, and if he still wants to choose another place to play. The protagonist replies that he only wants to meet with He Shikin. He wishes to be her guardian and doesn't want Ding Rulan to know, which is why he came to talk to Mao first. Rusan asks where the protagonist intends to take her. He thinks that Donghai is Li family territory and wonders if Ruotai is after He Shikin. But that doesn't make sense. So far, the protagonist hasn't formally introduced himself, so Mao Rusan asks for his name. Then Cheng finally introduces himself. Shortly after, Mao Rusan says he needs to take a call, and the protagonist agrees to wait. The person on the other end says that the guys called him about something related to an assassin or something like that. But Mao Rusan has a question and asks if he knows Wu Cheng, Gu Rubo, Ru Tai's friend. Upon hearing Cheng's name, asks why Mao Rusan is mentioning him. Rusan says that a man named Wu Cheng is standing right in front of him now. Then Arugo tells him to wait because he'll be there soon with his people. Cheng asks if Gu Rubo is coming. Rusan asks if they know each other. The protagonist says no, but he knows a few things about Ken and thinks it's better to continue talking about Miss He. Cheng gathers the details he wanted. Then he calls Lai Rotai. His brother-in-law asks if he is in the Magic City. The protagonist confirms, and Rotai says that Gu Rubo is his friend, and that if he does anything wrong, he will take responsibility. But Cheng says that he is not in the Magic City because of that, and that he won't cause any trouble. Then he says that Gu Rubo has arrived, and that he will continue the conversation later. When Cheng sees Gu Rubo, he hands in his phone. Ru Tai tells his friend to be polite to his brother-in-law. Gu Rubo asks what he's talking about, and Ru Tai simply advises him to be respectful to his brother-in-law. With that, Gu Rubo gets the feeling that Ru Tai is afraid of Wu Cheng, and he wonders why. Gu Rubo received a warning never to go against Cheng. Soon he begins to wonder why. Ru Tai explains that the incident caused by the Wei family was resolved by his brother-in-law, and the initial source of all the information was also Hen. Additionally, Ru Tai briefly recounts the protagonist's history. With that, Gu Rubo understands who Cheng is and says that he could have sent someone to receive him if he had known the protagonist would be in the city. Gu Rubo adopts a much calmer and more composed demeanor than usual, something Rusan finds strange since he is not used to seeing such behavior from Hen. But then, Gu Rubo says that Mao Rusan's subordinates acted without knowing anything and asks if he is trying to cause trouble for their guests. After clearing up the misunderstanding, they agree to go out and explore the city. Sometime later, Cheng mentions a few things that make Gu Rubo realize his knowledge is extensive. He remembers that Ru Tai warned him about this. Cheng asks if Gu Rubo is interested in surpassing his older brother, and Gu Rubo asks how he could do that. Cheng knows that he and his brother are business geniuses, each selected as part of the elite before turning 30, recognized even by rival families. Upon hearing the protagonist speak so much about his life, Gu Rubo concludes that he is merely stating what anyone could know, until Cheng says that whether or not Gu Rubo surpasses his brother depends entirely on him. Then, Gu Rubo says he will bet on following the protagonist's advice and see where it leads. Cheng says that this has nothing to do with his brother and is purely about business. So if he wants to become wealthier and more successful, he will have to take risks. Gu Rubo asks what he means by that. The protagonist tells him to take a guess and mentions that it involves Ding Rulan. With that, Gu Rubo realizes that Cheng is trying to use him to eliminate Ding Rulan, because he likely wants the Gu family to start a war with the Ding family. That way, the Ding family would no longer interfere in his relationship with Lai Rubing. However, when it comes to his own family, Gu Rubo cannot predict how things would turn out. But he remembers that the protagonist said this was about making money, not revenge, so he asks if Cheng needs him to take over the Ding family's business, stating that their rivalry has been ongoing for years, and that they are currently at a disadvantage. The protagonist confirms that he is aware of everything, and assures Gu Rubo that if he is willing to take the risk, he will make sure his brother falls behind. Gu Rubo thinks this is an exaggeration but decides to bet on the protagonist, and says he wants to do business with him. Cheng then says he will make a phone call, and tells the person on the other end to go immediately to the Magic City. Gu Rubo realizes that the person speaking with the protagonist is certainly not Ruo Tai. Noticing that it is a woman, Gu Rubo wonders if the protagonist has other girlfriends, but quickly decides that it is better not to meddle in that. Sometime later, Wu Yuran arrives at the location, exactly as the protagonist requested. Kurubo wonders if she was the one on the phone earlier, as the two seem quite close, and he doesn't know why. But as soon as Wu Yuran arrives, she hugs the protagonist in a rather informal manner, and whispering in Cheng's ear, she tells him to hurry up and finish this, because she can't wait any longer for him. However, the protagonist soon pushes her away, reminding her that they are in a meeting. Wu Yuran greets Chief Gu, saying it has been a while since they last saw each other. Gurubo thinks of her as a goddess, and upon seeing the two interact, he is sure that something is unusual, but he prefers to focus on business rather than pry into their personal lives. Cheng states that everyone there is now an ally, so he will be direct. He says that Wu Yuran will withdraw all investments from industries related to the Ding family. And after discussing this for an hour, Yu realizes that the protagonist's plan is quite comprehensive. Rusan says they can continue inside while he and Gu step out for a cigarette. Once they are alone, Wu Yuran asks the protagonist if he just found a business partner for her as if it were nothing, and she praises Cheng's efficiency. Not only that, but she starts making advances, and asks how the protagonist would like to be thanked. Cheng says there's nothing to thank him for, as he is simply executing his plan. Wu Yuran doesn't want to hear that from him. She says that Cheng can admit he feels the same way about her, claiming that he did all of this just to help her and asking if Cheng wants Gu to find out that they are lovers. The protagonist says that's not quite it, and that there's no need to reveal this secret. However, it doesn't matter whether he knows or not. With a teasing tone, Wu Yuran says that Cheng is actually still afraid that news will spread about him and lie breaking up. Shortly after, Gu returns to the room and catches the two of them in a somewhat awkward situation. But he maintains his composure and says he has finished his calls. Yet in his mind, Bu confirms his suspicion that Cheng and Wu Yuran are having an affair. Then he wonders if Wu Yuran is really the same woman he knows, because at a banquet he saw with his own eyes how a high-ranking figure, on the same level as his father, was flattering this woman. Even Gu's own brother-in-law said that if Wu Yuran were willing to marry him, he would leave his wife and be with her. So he wonders how a woman like that ended up with Wu Cheng, and what kind of man he must be to handle her. Gradually he realizes what Ru Tai was trying to warn him about, concluding that he will have to treat Cheng as well as possible. Suddenly, the protagonist receives a call from Lei Rubing. Gu sees that he is about to talk to his girlfriend while his lover is right beside him. On top of that, Cheng puts the phone on speaker, which unsettles him even more. Cheng simply answers and says he is too busy to talk right now. Rubing immediately asks if he is with another woman, which startles Gu even more than the protagonist himself. Seeing how comfortable Bu Yuran is with this, Bu wonders what she is doing, as this could be seen as a declaration of war against Cheng's girlfriend. Lai hears Ndon Wu's voice and realizes that the protagonist is with her. Cheng says that he asked her to meet him because they had matters to discuss. The protagonist's attitude leaves Gu even more confused, making him feel that watching this is more painful than when he was caught cheating on his own wife. Meanwhile, Rubing realizes that Cheng is in the middle of something important, so she doesn't argue and simply tells him to take care of his business and call her later. Then Cheng says goodbye to her and tells Mr. Gu that they will be staying for dinner. That way, Gu is put in charge of handling the food, and he feels relieved that no fight broke out, but at the same time, he wonders if Miss Lee really doesn't mind her boyfriend having other women. He thinks that being able to handle these two women in particular is something truly impressive. Shortly after, he hands over all the requested information to Cheng. The protagonist sees that everything he needs is there, and he thinks that now he can directly take control of some of the companies related to the Ding family. Gu considers that with the support of his family and Wu Yuran's connections, along with the information provided by the protagonist, three indispensable factors, he has no chance of failing, as he is now the most critical moment of his life and is ready for whatever comes next. Cheng says that now that everything is almost ready, he wants to discuss the division of the cooperating companies. Gu Rubo had already been expecting this. He then says that the protagonist should keep at least 5% of the profits to employed people, and that he and Wu will take 60%. Wu Yuran is surprised because she thought she would only get 40. In turn, Cheng says that Yu Rubo will only get 35. Gu confirms and says that it's a small price to pay for their friendship. The protagonist thanks him and hopes they will do more business together in the future. After they finish the meeting, Cheng and Wu Yuran are left alone, and she says that they finally have their moment together. After spending quite some time together, Wu Yuran says she is going to take a shower. Meanwhile, Chang decides to call Lai Rubing, and asks if she hasn't gone to sleep yet because she was waiting for his call. Before leaving, Wu Yuran sneakily listens in on their conversation. Rubing says she is working overtime and hasn't even gone home yet. After that, the protagonist explains what he was doing in the Magic City and shares all the details. His girlfriend says that Wu Yuran is truly in his hands since she even helped him close a $1 million deal. Then, Wu Yuran moves closer and says that Miss Lee acts differently when she's jealous. Realizing that Wu is next to the protagonist, Lai thinks she won't let that provocation slide, and she says that she's not jealous but angry, and warns that the protagonist will soon find out what will happen as soon as he returns to the city. He asks if it will be like the last time they were together, because if that's the case, he will be looking forward to it. Lai Rubing says she's not joking and mentions that Ding Rulong called her recently, saying he is on his way to Donghai to apologize in person. The protagonist asks if she knows when. Lai says she doesn't, but Cheng says he will be back in 2 days. This makes Rubing feel more secure, and now she returns to her work. Wu Yuran heard the entire conversation, and asks what the protagonist is going to do about it. Cheng simply says he will do something fun. She asks if it will be as fun as what Rubing promised to do with Hen when she returns to the city. The protagonist decides to play along and says yes. Wu Yuran then says that she also wants something very interesting from Hen. However, Cheng says that if she really wants that, she will have to prepare herself mentally, something that for Wu Yuran is not a problem. The next day, Cheng wakes up with a note beside Hen. Wu Yuran says she left first but wants to meet him again soon to have more incredible moments like this. Cheng is looking forward to it. Now he knows he needs to find Yi Shiken, so he arranges a meeting with her at Century Garden Community, near New Century Park. As soon as the protagonist steps out of the car, he comes across a girl and recognizes her as Stingson, so he tries to talk to her, but the girl doesn't know him and ignores him. Nearby, she hears her mother calling and asks the protagonist to be quiet. She hides and asks for his help. Her mother approaches and asks the protagonist if he has seen her 14-year-old daughter, who ran off a moment ago. Cheng simply signals, pointing to where the girl is hiding. Then her mother finds her and gets irritated that she was hiding. She quickly thanks the protagonist for his help. He says it's no problem and asks if they are arguing because of drawing. Yi Shiken replies that they are, but in her mind she wonders who he is, because he seems to know her daughter and even knows about the drawings. Cheng then says that she sent in some sketches of her daughter, which is why he knows about it. That's when she finally realizes who Cheng is. So they formally introduce themselves, and Yi Shiken says the girl is her daughter, the one she mentioned, Keek Singson, and she tells the girl that this is the teacher they talked about. Singson thinks that their fight was precisely because of this teacher, and now there's no escape. Yi Shiken says her daughter is embarrassing her, but invites Cheng inside to talk. Once inside the house, she says she's almost done cooking and invites him to stay and eat after their conversation. Cheng accepts, and she tells him to make himself comfortable while he waits. Then the protagonist goes to the girl's drawing studio. Singson follows him inside. Soon she asks what her teacher is doing, and tries to set up a scene, pretending that he is hitting her. The protagonist just laughs at the situation, and the girl asks why he finds it funny. She realizes that her act didn't work, because instead of being scared and running away, her teacher just laughed in her face. But she doesn't give up and thinks she will have to use her foolproof technique. So once again, she pretends to be assaulted. However, once again, the protagonist laughs at her performance. Singson then asks if he isn't even a little afraid. Cheng asks what he should be afraid of, so the girl thinks he is really strange and says she will call her mother. With that, Cheng asks if her mother would believe her, since it's the first time they are meeting. Why would he hurt her right after entering her house? Singson replies that he would hit her because she didn't respect him, and claims that all the boys in her class admire her beauty, and she can tell what they are thinking just by looking at their faces. So since her teacher is also a man, he wouldn't be any different from them, claiming that when it comes to this kind of thing, there is no mother who wouldn't support her daughter, and she tells her teacher to leave now, or else she will report him. However, Cheng states that he never accepts being threatened. With that, Singson decides to act. She calls her mother and waits for her to appear. With a sarcastic look, the girl waits. However, with an even more mischievous look, the protagonist shows that he was reporting the entire conversation. Soon, the girl realizes that her plan has completely failed. Her mother arrives and asks what's going on. Then, Singson just says that she wants ribs for lunch. Her mother asks if that's really all. She insists that it is, saying she's just hungry. The mother then leaves, saying she will hurry and asking her daughter to obey her teacher. Singson breathes a sigh of relief for not being exposed. But angry, she asks if her teacher always records their conversations, calling him ridiculous. Cheng retorts, saying that what's even more ridiculous was the entire scene she tried to stage. The girl asks why he did that. The protagonist says he always distrusts spoiled girls, which is why he likes to be prepared. He also tells her not to cause any more trouble, otherwise her mother will hear this recording and upon learning what her daughter is capable of, she will be much stricter in raising her. Singson realizes that because of this recording, she will have to do everything he says and feels trapped. She quickly thinks that she must get her hands on that recording no matter what. Then she says she agrees to obey and won't do anything wrong anymore. After that, she says she needs to go to the bathroom. There she calls her sister Shanshan, and says that an adult bullied her. Shanshan asks who did it, claiming that she will gather as many people as possible to help her get rid of this person. Soon, Singson thinks she will have her revenge against her teacher, wondering how long he will keep that calm expression and smile. However, as she leaves the bathroom, she runs into her mother. Kishikin reminds her that she was warned to obey her teacher, and asks why she is hiding from her lessons again. Singson claims that she went to the bathroom because she genuinely needed to, but her mother doesn't believe her and says that lunch is almost ready, so she must learn something before then. So the girl returns, saying she is ready to start her lesson. While Chang teaches her a few things, all she can think about is pretending to be an obedient student, but catching him off guard at the right moment. Half an hour later, they sit down for lunch. Singson says she wants to learn how to draw nature, and asks if she can go outside with her teacher. Kishikin asks if the protagonist agrees, and he responds that he does. That is exactly what the girl wanted to hear. After lunch, they leave the house, and the protagonist asks the girl if the real reason they are there is to draw. The entire gang is already waiting for them. The girl steps away from the protagonist and greets her friends, referring to them as brothers. She asks why Ki brought so many people, saying that wasn't necessary, but Ki says that no one dares to mess with his protege, and he asks the protagonist who he thinks he is to have done that. The protagonist says nothing and simply stares at them, until Singson asks why they are still hesitating. Ki first wants to know what she would like them to do with this guy. The girl doesn't really know what to say, but from a distance, someone who is following the protagonist notices that he might be in trouble and needs to alert his boss. Meanwhile, Ki says that Singson is too kind, which is why people bully her, but now he promises to help her fight back. He then demands that the protagonist get on his knees and beg for forgiveness. But instead, Chang asks Mao Ki if his family knows just how amazing he is outside the house. Now Ki asks if he really dares to act arrogant even after knowing who he is. Chang states that this won't be an easy fight, and asks if he is ready to take a beating from someone who stands up to bullies. This makes Kai even more irritated. He asks if the protagonist really thinks he can take them all on alone and still win. He claims he has never seen anyone so audacious in his entire life, but before he can act, he receives a call from his father. He says that the protagonist is lucky and that he will wait a little longer. However, upon answering, Ki gets a scolding from his father, who tells him that he is dragging him into trouble and that, because of this, he will break his legs later. Kai asks what his father is talking about. The old man says he is referring to the fact that he is trying to go against Wu Cheng. Kai says he hasn't done anything yet. His father is relieved and says that Uncle Gu considers Cheng more important than his own father. Then he asks if the protagonist is still nearby. His son says yes, so the old man tells him to pass the phone to Hen. Kai does so, even though he doesn't quite understand why. Seeing Ki do this is quite strange, as his entire gang did not expect him to lower his guard so suddenly. Then the protagonist answers the phone. Mr. Mao says that this was all a misunderstanding and apologizes on behalf of his son, claiming that he simply didn't know who he was dealing with. Cheng agrees, and Mao thanks him for it, stating that he will personally handle the situation once his son returns. The protagonist says he can simply let this go and continue handling his business. Then he hands the phone back to the young man, asking if he still wants to fight, like a dog with its tail between its legs. Ki backs down, claiming he didn't know that he and his father knew each other and that this was all a misunderstanding. His entire gang doesn't understand why he backed down, but Ki says he will explain everything later. Even Singson is surprised because she really didn't expect this outcome. Then Ki tells his men to stop talking nonsense and to apologize to the protagonist. Even their own leader apologized, so they didn't have much choice. Soon, everyone apologizes to Wu Cheng. He says they don't even seem like criminals, acting so politely, and lets them go. Kai, though reluctant, tells everyone to leave with Hen, and to leave Mr. Wu alone. With that, Singson thinks it's better to run away too since she didn't expect things to turn out this way. However, the protagonist doesn't let her escape. The girl is cornered, saying it was all a misunderstanding, and promises that if he doesn't tell her mother, she will do whatever he says from now on. Cheng asks if she is serious. Singson says she is. After all, he is more impressive than Ki, and she promises to obey. Then the protagonist receives an invitation for a meeting, and tells the girl to go home since their lessons will have to be postponed until the next day. Then the protagonist heads to the meeting, coming across Gu Rubo, Mao Ruzan, and his son. As soon as the three arrive, Mao says he owes him an explanation about what happened earlier, and that he would never break the rules of this world just because of his son. even inviting Mr. Good to be a witness. The protagonist tells him not to worry too much about it. Mao thanks him for not being too harsh and arguing with his boy. Right after apologizing, he says he is leaving and hopes the protagonist enjoys his stay. Soon he decides to get some rest at the hotel, but as soon as he enters his room, he sees a woman. Recognizing her as the girl they wanted to send to Ding Rulan, Zhuang Xiaodi, he immediately thanks Chief Mao for the courtesy. Zhuang Xiaodi already knows that he is Wu Cheng. However, she hadn't seen him before and finds his appearance quite attractive. She says the protagonist looks very tired and offers to help him relax. She also says that if he wants to take a bath, he can use the bathroom. Already in the jacuzzi, Zhuang Xiaodi asks if the water temperature is comfortable. Cheng replies that it is. She offers to join him and wash his back. Cheng says he knows who she is. Not only that, but he states that he knows exactly how she felt when she saw him enter. Cheng says she must be happy, since he's not the overweight old man she had imagined. He also says that he knows she has never dated or studied because she spent all her time working. And he knows she has never had any experiences with men. Her parents had more than 5 million in debt. Every time the collector showed up, they were on the verge of madness. So Zhuang Xiaodi had to work every day in 3 different jobs, never getting the chance to attend school. And when she managed to save 300,000 over the years, her parents went to the loan sharks and borrowed even more money. However, the interest kept piling up, and no matter how much she worked, it seemed impossible to pay off the debt, despite all her sweat and tears, until she was approached by Mao, who offered to settle her debt in exchange for a favor. She agreed to anything as long as her debt was cleared. She was really expecting the worst but felt relieved to see that the man she had to serve was not an old creep, and knowing that he understands her situation only motivates her to do her best to please him, even if she has no experience in this. Cheng was just teasing her and didn't expect Zhuang Xiaodi to take it so seriously. Either way, he tells her she can do whatever she wants. Before starting, she turns off the lights and moves closer to the protagonist, making him think that Zhuang Xiaodi is really good at this. The next day, he wakes up and gets ready to leave. Zhuang Xiaodi asks if he is already heading out. Cheng asks if she isn't feeling tired from the previous night. He also tells her to rest because he will return as soon as he finishes handling something. This surprises her since Zhuang Xiaodi didn't expect him to be so kind. After that, he goes to Miki Shikin, who asks why he didn't come to her house to continue her daughter's lessons. She says that if the problem is the distance, she can rent a house in Donghai during the summer break, and he can spend time teaching her daughter. Now that he is alone with her, the protagonist asks if he Shikin isn't afraid that Ding Rulan will find out that she left Shanghai with her daughter without permission. Immediately, he Shikin thinks that for years no one knew what she had been through, nor did they have any idea about her relationship with Rulan, but Cheng appeared for her. Online, she searched for several teachers, but it was Wu Cheng who insisted on being hired. She quickly concludes that he knows her secrets and fears being manipulated, something that scares her. However, Cheng tells her not to worry because Ding Rulan doesn't care much about these things. As long as she doesn't take her daughter, she can go wherever she wants. He Shikin asks if he is trying to be alone with her. Cheng says no, and that he just wants to talk about Don Yuan Tao. At that moment, Shikin realizes that he even knows about the turning point in her life. Noticing her discomfort, the protagonist suggests discussing things elsewhere. On the way, she realizes that he is taking her to a hotel and wonders if he really just wants to talk. At the reception, the protagonist asks if an executive suite is available. The receptionist says yes, and just requests their identification for the check-in process. After that, he rents the room and heads toward the elevator. Shikin asks why he chose this place. Cheng replies that the privacy here is the best, and no one will interrupt them. Immediately, she concludes that the protagonist has ulterior motives, and says she thought he was a decent person. However, Cheng holds her by the waist and says they will talk properly once they enter the room. After entering, the protagonist tells He Shikin not to just stand there watching. He says she can make herself comfortable, and asks why she looks so uneasy. He Shikin says she thought Cheng was more of a gentleman, but now she believes he is no different from the other men she has met, judging by his current behavior. What the protagonist says she is mistaken and claims that she owes him an apology. She doesn't quite understand what he means, and she says that if sleeping with her is what he wants, she will grant his wish, but she states that she will never see him again. Once it's over, Cheng must not look for her. In response, the protagonist says that he didn't bring her here for that, and that she doesn't know him, much less his true intentions. He asks what her daughter would think if she saw her mother in this situation. Shikin says that he brought her to a hotel room and even embraced her, so she couldn't have assumed otherwise. Cheng admits that he'd hugged her on purpose. Shikin then says she was right, and just wants to get it over with, but the protagonist claims he only did that because of Ding Rulan. Immediately, Shikin feels trapped, thinking that Rulan might show up at any moment. However, the protagonist reassures her, saying that won't happen, With that, He Shiken asks if Cheng wanted to provoke Ding Rulan. He says yes and claims that the hotel's security cameras are likely being monitored by Ding Rulan. He repeats that he has no ulterior motives and only wants to talk. Cheng says he is being watched by Ding Rulan and intentionally wants him to see these images. However, He Shiken imagines that if Ding Rulan finds out that she went to a hotel with another man, he won't let her live, and she wonders if the protagonist is trying to set her out. But then she thinks that if this really happened, the real target would be her lover, not her. So she wonders what the protagonist is planning. Cheng asks if she knows Lei Rubing. He Shiken says yes. Then he tells her that they are dating. Ding Rulan went mad because of it, just as he has killed for He Shiken before. Now he wants Cheng dead. Then Cheng says that Ding Rulan and his entire family must die. So He Shiken testifies against him, stating that Rulan killed Don Yuan Tao. The Dong family will finally go to war with the Ding family. He Shiken doesn't seem to like this idea at all, but the protagonist insists on convincing her, claiming that he has already prepared everything, and if she agrees to go to Donghai with her daughter, he will take care of both of them, promising that a free life awaits her. At that moment, He Shiken appears convinced, stating that she will do everything she can to help take down Ding Rulan. However, she asks why he is faking a scene, thinking it would be better to actually betray Rulan rather than just pretending. She is determined to make Rulan suffer a real betrayal and tries to persuade the protagonist. But Cheng says there's no need since their goals align. Her cooperation alone is enough, and he wonders how Xingsun would react if she knew he killed her father. He Shiken says she cannot let her daughter find out. Cheng then tells her that after they testify, both of them will have to leave the country and only return once everything is settled. Moreover, during their stay in Donghai, he can continue teaching the girl how to draw, as he genuinely believes in her talent. With that, He Shiken says Cheng doesn't need to say anything else, and agrees to help him, but on one condition. She truly wants to betray Ding Rulan. The protagonist tries to convince her otherwise, arguing that it would complicate things as they need thorough planning to execute their strategy and cannot afford any distractions. However, there is no way to change her mind, and after 2 hours the protagonist says they need to leave. He Shiken observes him through the mirror and finds him more attractive each time. Once outside, Cheng says he has other matters to handle, and asks He Shiken to pack her things with her daughter to travel to Donghai. Back at Mao Ruzan's hotel, he heard that the protagonist is returning to Donghai, and hopes he will accept the gesture of goodwill, requiring only a signature. Cheng sees that Mao wants to transfer 45% of his shares, and asks if he is sure about this. Mao says yes, as he is doing it in exchange for his friendship. The protagonist says that they are already friends and that, due to the war with Rulan, it is difficult to keep company shares in his own name. Mao acknowledges that Cheng really thinks of everything and asks if he wants to choose a representative. Cheng replies that it would be rude to refuse such a gesture, so he says he wants Zhuang Xiaodi as his representative. She herself can't believe he just said that. She thinks that her family's debt isn't that high and that, besides paying it off, she would still be left with a good amount of money, wondering if this is some kind of trap. However, Mao tells her not to overthink it and that Cheng himself will sign the agreement. He only asked her to be his representative, and there's nothing wrong with that. Zhuang Xiaodi asks if that's true. The protagonist confirms that it is and assures her that he has no issues with the contract. With that, she agrees to sign. Soon, Mao thinks that by doing this, he, like Gu, will prove himself worthy of Cheng's trust. After that, Zhuang Xiaodi says she will put in even more effort from now on. Cheng acknowledges this and tells her to go shopping, letting her know that he will call her later. As soon as he leaves the place, he encounters a car and someone asks him to get in. Cheng sees his father-in-law and is surprised to find him in the Magic City. Mr. Lai says that words are useless to convince him and informs him that Ding Rulan is heading to Donghai, asking what Cheng plans to do about it. Cheng asks what his father-in-law wants him to do. Mr. Lai states that he is aware Rulan recently attacked and nearly harmed his daughter, but he insists that now is not the right time for him to die, at least not in Donghai. What the protagonist says that if Rulan dares to get too close, he cannot guarantee that nothing will happen to him. With that, Mr. Li notices the murderous intent in the protagonist's eyes, and says that as long as it is done cleanly and Rulan does not die in Donghai, he will not interfere. With that settled, Cheng says he has other matters to attend to, and bids farewell to his father-in-law. After that, he meets up with Zhuang Xiaodi again, and in the middle of it, decides to call his girlfriend. Rubing asks when the protagonist will return to the city. He says tomorrow afternoon, but that he will also be bringing 3 people with him. His girlfriend asks who these people are, and he replies that she will find out in person. Lai Rubing asks if all 3 are women. Cheng says yes. She immediately gets furious with him, saying that he has only been in the Magic City for 3 days, and asks how he already managed to convince 3 women to travel with him. Chang says that Rubing doesn't seem like herself, reacting this way. She says that Chang could at least try not to be so indulgent, and asks what would happen to her reputation if people found out about this. The protagonist responds that he will accept any punishment from her when he gets home, so there's no reason to be jealous. With that, Rubing agrees and tells him to remember who suggested this. As soon as he hangs up, Xuan Xiaodi asks if the protagonist was talking to his girlfriend. He says it was his fiancée. Then Zhuang Xiaodi comments that she sounded angry, and because of that, she got a little scared. However, the protagonist tells her not to be afraid because nothing bad will happen. The next day he arrives from a company. Lai Rubing, who was waiting for him, tells Chang to introduce them. Then he tells the women that Lai Rubing is his fiancée. Next, he introduces Zhuang Xiaodi. Rubing notices the nervousness of this girl and is surprised that she hasn't run away yet. After that, Chang introduces his drawing student, He Xingxin, and her mother He Shiken. Lai Rubing knows exactly who this woman is, the only witness to Ding Rulan killing Don Yuantai. From her perspective, having someone in front of her who only existed in history until now is quite sudden. Judging by their state, they must have come to an agreement with Chang. If He Shikin is truly going to betray Ding Rulan, everything that has been hidden will come to light. So she greets her formally, welcoming her to the city. Then Lai Rubing says that the protagonist never ceases to surprise her. Soon she walks over to the other girl and introduces herself to Zhuang Xiaodi as well. Seeing the girl up close, she notices how young she is and asks her age. Zhuang Xiaodi says she is 21. Right away, Rubing comments that she is the youngest, and she enjoys seeing that the girl is nervous because it makes her feel superior to the other women the protagonist has introduced. Then Chang says he is tired after the trip and wants to sit down and talk, so he tells Xingxin to go play somewhere while they talk. As soon as the child leaves, Rubing asks if He Shikin slept with her boyfriend. She didn't even need to answer because her reaction said it all. He Shikin tries to justify herself, saying that she took the initiative because she just wanted revenge against Ding Rulan. She also claims to have taken contraceptives to avoid causing any problems for them and insists that she has no other intentions. Lai Rubing tells her that she doesn't need to justify herself because she believes there isn't a woman in the world who wouldn't desire her boyfriend, so she doesn't blame her. The protagonist feels quite pleased upon hearing this. Meanwhile, his girlfriend thinks that she knows about He Shikin but knows nothing about the other girl, concluding that it would be best to clarify things, so she says that He Shikin and her daughter will stay home tonight while she and Zhuang Xiaodi go out for dinner with him. For the protagonist, there is no issue with this arrangement, unlike Zhuang Xiaodi, who is clearly uncomfortable with the situation. With that, they head out later for dinner. However, they end up encountering several men. The protagonist asks what's going on. They are her employees, but Rubing isn't in the mood to discuss this now, as she knows what's coming. She simply ignores the question and leads the two of them to another meeting place. Upon arriving, Wu Chang ends up running into some of his other lovers, something he definitely was not expecting.